Hello and welcome back to the Not That Oscar podcast. I'm your host, Oscar, and I'm joined once again by the brilliant Ben Gibbons. Ben, how are you, my friend?
How's it going? I'm good. Thank you very much for having me back.
Hey, good
Yeah,
for you to be here. It's look, monster episode today. Everyone knows why we're here, but we're gonna make them wait just for a second. I should probably ask, how are you? How's life been? How's movie watching been?
good. Yeah, no, I've been having a lovely time. We've gone out for a good few cinema trips in the last little while. I took the kids out to see Minions and Monsters yesterday.
Nice.
And then just kind of, it's been a good time. But the Odyssey really has taken the cake. So I'm excited to get into that and chat about it. But yeah, no, it's been a good time. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm trying to think like I've done a pretty good job over the last few weeks about like locking back in again and watching more movies.
Hmm.
But it's kind of I've literally been counting down the days for the Odyssey, and once this conversation's over, once I've edited it and clips are out throughout the week, there's another film that I'm just cannot wait to sort of sink my teeth into, which of course we will have an episode on. But for now, yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is a chat about the Odyssey. Obviously, there's going to be spoilers. I mean, look, the story is like nearly 3,000 years old anyway.
Mm.
But if you've not seen the film, I would highly recommend going and doing that and then coming back to this episode. Remember, you can watch and listen on both Spotify or YouTube or some other mysterious platform, because I hear that we're also on Apple and like iHeart or someone like that. So we're everywhere. Give us a like, give us a follow. We will jump in. Ben, before going into the Odyssey, what's your relationship like with Nolan? How were you beyond anticipated for this movie? Was there a lot of hype? Were you nervous?
I am a fan of Nolan, as I think everyone is. I think it's kind of a thing where, like, so many of his projects have resonated with so many people, and he's hit such a broad kind of fan base that you can't help but, like, recognize and respect that he is someone who is incredible at his craft, you know?
Mm.
But I don't know that everyone has kind of, like, found a movie that has been, like, their movie or really, like, just kind of gone to their heart. So for me, with Nolan, I really, really like him as a director. I wouldn't have said prior to this, and I don't know. I'm still kind of weighing it up. It's fresh in my mind. I wouldn't have said he's like my favorite director going into this movie, but there are ones that I've really enjoyed. You know, I've spoken to you before about how my favorite Nolan movie is The Prestige. That is one of my all-time favorites. It's not in my top four, but it is one of those movies that is really, really up there, and I absolutely adore. So I have a lot of respect. I have a lot of love for him. I do think before this movie, there was a little bit of me where I was like, sometimes some of his stuff can feel a little bit gimmicky. Like sometimes he is leaning very into like a
Mm.
non-linear story, or he's leaning into these things that seem complex, and sometimes maybe even for not a lot of reason, but just to kind of test an experiment. Which again, that has its place, that has a space, and I think I can understand that. But it's not been every project he's done has been like, oh yeah, I absolutely adore it. Like I'll go and I'll watch him because he is obviously on that kind of platform.
Hmm.
But yeah, going into the movie, I was just like, Nolan, great director. I'm excited to see what he does with it. But it wasn't like insane anticipation.
Yeah, I think for me, I would probably look. We'll get into where he sort of sits in the top directors of now or of all time later on, but I think I'm always excited for a Nolan project. But really, I've only been a movie goer, like an active cinephile, over his last sort of two or three projects. I'd say Tenant, Oppenheimer, and now this.
Yes.
I've been actively in the cinema while those films coming out. Like the Dark Knight trilogy, I adore.
Hmm.
I think one of the like we'll talk about his movies later, but one of the best origin stories of a superhero ever. But I've not seen any of those films on the big screen. They've
Mm.
always been at home. I wasn't quite the right age when they came out.
Wow. Okay.
Um, I was in my like Spider-Man, like TASM era, Amazing Spider-Man
Yeah.
era. That was
Yeah.
that was what I was focusing on. Um, but I was a little bit nervous going into this. I got to be honest. Like a lot of my friends, um, we've been speaking about it since from Cannes Film Festival onwards.
Yeah. Hmm.
Like this was the first really big release of the year, and I felt I felt unsure. Not that I didn't think Nolan could do it, but he's always so bold in his sort of scale of movies. It's like, right, he's done it. You know, his previous 12 films are all brilliant in their own way. but he's done it probably near perfect or better than most directors 10 times in a row. And it's like, surely this man has to stumble at least. I'm not saying, he would fail, but there's got to be a little hiccup at some point. I mean, statistically, but that was my main concern coming in. As I was like, so many A-list actors, so much story to tell. We've never seen an adaptation like this of a story so old. There was a lot of question marks. And not that I didn't think he'd do it, but I think just naturally I'm like, how the hell does anyone even tackle this? So did you think, top line, do you think he tackled it well? Did you come out of the Odyssey feeling the way you thought you would?
No, I didn't feel the way I thought I would because I felt a million times better. This was stupid. It was stupid how good it was. I genuinely was overjoyed walking out of the cinema because I was like, like you say, it's a 3,000-year-old story. He is very bold in his approaches, and as I kind of mentioned, I think sometimes he's experimental for experimental sake. So I kind of went in with all those expectations. And then watching it, it just felt like a culmination of everything he's ever done. And it felt like this made sense. This is the movie that he was working towards. And he delivered in every capacity. And I was like, damn. Like, it just really, it struck me. I was really, really happy coming out of the cinema. It was almost kind of euphoric. It's just like, this is what cinema's meant to be. And like, I get now why he's being so intense. And it's like, oh, I need an IMAX 70mm. And I need this and I need that. Like, because he is a perfectionist, and this is his kind of like, this is Michelangelo's David, right? Like, this is kind of, I think, his pièce de résistance. It's incredible. So I came away bowled over, man. Like, it really hit me.
And have you seen the film just once so far?
Yes. I'm going to go back and watch it again, but I watched it in IMAX. I watched it in digital IMAX. So obviously there's like 41 IMAX 70mm screens around the world. So there is one in Manchester. Manchester Printworks has one, which is my kind of like local IMAX 70mm. So I can definitely go and check it out there. But obviously a lot of these places are booked out right now. But I reckon it will be running for a long time, right? I think said yourself. Yeah. Oh, actually, another friend I was speaking to who's in London was saying that like all the good IMAX seats are booked until September in his locals. And I was like, yeah, okay, it's going to be there for a while. So I will definitely revisit in IMAX and hopefully IMAX 70mm. But I went IMAX digital. So it is a slightly smaller kind of like ratio, I believe.
Yeah, we have a decent selection of IMAX cinemas in London. There's only 2 that show it in 70mm, like the exact format. I have seen the film twice, but in standard premium large formats, just at my local cinema. I am seeing it in 70mm IMAX at the BFI, but not till August 20th or 22nd, something like that. Yeah. That was the first seat that we could get that was not right at the front, and you're just looking at like morphed faces
100%
the whole time. So, look, as brilliant as IMAX is because of you're getting so much more immersion, there is still limitations within your booking availability because you do not want to be sat within the first 3 or 4 rows, specifically for a film like this that is shot in IMAX in its entirety. And if you're seeing a film that's just sort of scaled up, like I went to the Jackass premiere a couple of weeks back, I could have happily watched that front row. Like, you're not missing, an enormous amount of content there. But
sure,
this, I've got a friend coming over from Spain to watch it with us.
Wow.
Because they don't have an IMAX at all.
Yeah.
Or like, if they do, I think they might have like one what's called a Limax, which is basically just the digital version.
Sure.
But not where she lives. So she's coming over to London sort of for that weekend. Going to be doing a bunch of other film related stuff, and then there's a group of us going to see it at the BFI, which I think. Look, I've got to be honest. I came out the film first time, and we'll do scores right at the very end, but I was very happy with it. Like, I really enjoyed my time. There were certainly elements where I was like, oh, that kind of just went over my head. There was so much information to take in that I was feeling not underwhelmed, but like, I need to rewatch this.
Yeah.
And I was planning on doing a rewatch anyway. I had 2 bookings within the same day, 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. So I was like, I cannot wait to get back for the 9 p.m. Not just to revisit the story, but I felt like context was needed for a lot of this stuff. And I do think that having a slight understanding of Greek mythology and maybe the story itself definitely helps. Because I went back in and I enjoyed it even greater the second time round.
Yeah.
And I really, really felt like I could actually sit, like the first time round, when I watched it first time, I went in with my notepad and I made my notes and I kind of was like analyzing the film.
Mm-hmm.
Second time round, I could sit back and enjoy it and take it all in. And I'm glad I did it that way round. Whereas most films, I'll like sort of just sit and watch it the first time, and if it's a big release, I'll sort of analyze it second time round. I'm glad I did it this way because, God, I needed some of that extra information. I mean, before we started recording, me and Ben were having a laugh about some of these names are just, I mean, ridiculous. And I know a lot of the modern audience are just going to be like, I have no idea who that is. And they might just recognize the characters by the actor's face rather than the character's name. So really, really found a rewatch was beneficial. And I'm excited to watch it in IMAX because I do want to know what that difference feels like. I actually did a video on my TikTok this week saying that I do think some of the sort of, specifically on TikTok, there's been like discourse around whether you should be watching in IMAX or not. And a few people have taken the approach of being like, I'm better than you because I've seen it in IMAX, rather than that is the better format to see it in. So I did a video talking about like ignore the sort of pretentious people. If you're able to go see the movie in IMAX, you are obviously going to have a more immersive experience because it is a larger scale. Your sound design will be better, and it is practically how Nolan is seeing, you know, the film himself. But what is so brilliant about Nolan and the Odyssey in particular is I think you could genuinely watch this in any format possible, and it would just be one of the greatest epics I think has been told in maybe ever. I could probably confidently say it's in the top 5 epic adventures of all time. Don't ask me what the other 4 are, but I think pulling off a story of this scale is unbelievable. And he couldn't have done it alone. He obviously picked out an absolutely incredible cast. And to sort of help us go through the plots and many elements of the movie, I thought we would tackle it sort of by the main 4 characters first. And then we can talk about the supporting cast, and then we'll go through sort of favourite moments and sequences of the film. So that's sort of for me and Ben to understand where we're going, and for you listeners to what to expect. Ben, how did you find Matt Damon, the leading man, Odysseus? He's on the his name is sort of hinted at behind us. We have a different character which we'll talk about later on. But how did you find Matt Damon? He's worked with Nolan before, so I wasn't surprised to see him back.
Yeah, he's worked with Nolan a couple of times now. I believe Interstellar was his first project together. I've been watching a silly amount of interviews in the last couple of days since watching it. I didn't want to watch them ahead of time. I didn't want anything to be given away. But I've been watching quite a few and kind of seeing the dialogue and the discourse between actors like Matt Damon, Christopher Nolan, and then whoever is interviewing. And it's been just incredible to see how much dedication and how much went into everyone's efforts to make this movie into what it is. Matt Damon as the lead, obviously we've seen him a lot as an action star, right? Like we've seen him as Jason Bourne, we've seen him kind of tackle these very active, very physical roles, and this is a very active physical role, but there is so much that goes into the emotion and so much that goes into performing alone, right? Like he has these little scenes where it's either very quiet and he's interacting with, again, so spoilers, obviously everyone knows at this point, but here where he's interacting with Zendaya's Athena, or where he's interacting with Charlize Theron's Calypso, and having these kind of like little moments, you know, quiet moments where he is performing and there's not a whole lot of other people around. There are also these kind of more I don't know, more complex or layered kind of performances where he's performing with the rest of his crew, people like Himesh Patel, people like Menelaus, Agamemnon, all these different things where he engages with the other characters. So really, in approaching this film, there's a lot of different sides of a character that he's exploring. There's so many different aspects of who Odysseus is and what he is kind of searching for, seeking, and trying to obtain. And I think Matt Damon did an incredible job. He really, really delivered, both in terms of the action, really bringing all of that to the fore, but also in creating this character who exists over a period of 20 years, from this early stages of going to the war in Troy to this later stage of trying to find his way home, and the changes that develop inside of him over that course. I think it was really fantastic. I really felt the way that he was able to communicate that. And then hearing just kind of like anecdotal stories and interesting things, I think it was like Robert Pattinson was saying that he walked by his trailer at one point while he was on the set, and he just heard him screaming and shouting and doing all this stuff. And he's like, oh, what's going on in there? And as it turned out, Matt Damon was trying to add like some depth, some richness, some strain to his voice to really present Odysseus as a 20-year older character, as someone who's tired, haggard, really physically drained and exhausted. And it just goes to how committed he is and how willing he is to kind of like throw himself into that role. Everyone else who's talked on the cast has talked about how he came to set happy every day, and he really was just a workhorse who really led and inspired people, and was just like never stopped, never complained, never kind of like slacked off, but like literally threw himself in 110%. So I think Matt Damon, outstanding. This is by far his best performance in any film.
Yeah, I do think he sort of stood out as one of the characters that felt more weathered when we were revisiting them later on in the story.
Yes.
I think there's particular characters where I'm like, you've not changed a day. Like, for me, Anne Hathaway felt the same the whole way through the movie.
Yeah.
And I'll talk about her performance, but like, I didn't really feel like she had aged that much. Obviously, she's in a much more different scenario where she's sort of sat in Ithaca and she's living the life of luxury, whereas Odysseus is out, on the sea, literally being battered by the waves and by other men and ancient myths that he crossed paths with. But was really impressed with how Damon sort of brought this tired old man to screen. He went out sort of even sort of the first Battle of Troy. You could already see sort of the effects of war crossing this man's, like, just behind his eyes.
Yes.
And I think that really sort of snowballs throughout the movie, and Damon did a brilliant job at sort of relaying that sort of emotion to the audience. I trying to think, this probably is his best performance. It's hard to pick out anything else. I do really like him in Oppenheimer. I think he's brilliant in that. And I've always enjoyed his Jason Bourne stuff. But apart from maybe the Departed and The Martian being close second and third, this is, by far his strongest performance. Because he has to do a lot of legwork in this movie. I mean, he's in practically every scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is just unbelievable. I mean, most leading actors are in sort of 60% of a movie. But it's ridiculous how much is being asked of him in this. So the poor man needs a rest, I think, because prior to this,
he's earned it.
Oppenheimer,
he's 100% earned it.
Prior to Oppenheimer, he was going to take some time off from acting, and he'd agreed that with his wife. And then he said, "Well, I'm only going to come back to acting if Nolan calls. I go back to acting." So then Nolan called and said, "I've got a role for you in Oppenheimer." And he's like, "Okay, fine, I'll do that." Basically has like a month or two off, and then Nolan's like, "By the way, I want you to play Odysseus in one of the greatest epics of all time." And it's like, this man needs a big holiday. But he's also ripped. I mean, I don't know how old Matt Damon is. He must be pushing 60.
Oh, it's gotta be.
And this man is just absolutely jacked. I couldn't believe, particularly at sort of the end when he sort of wakes up next to Athena. He's 55.
He's
okay,
55.
Hey, look. If I look like that at 55, I'll be chuffed.
If I look like that ever, I'd be chuffed. That's insane.
It is completely ridiculous. So I think probably by far Matt Damon's favorite performance of the entire cast, but maybe not the most surprising, because I always knew that Damon could bring this kind of level of performance.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And not to reduce it down to award season already, but I wonder whether that will have an effect on his successes, in that this feels like something Damon could easily do. Like this isn't a performance where I'm like, oh my god, he's completely blown my socks off because I just didn't think that he had it in him.
Interesting.
And I have a sneaky feeling that might affect him when we come round to next year.
Oh.
But
I'd be
I'm
really
sure.
disappointed if it did. Honestly, I'd be really disappointed if he doesn't end up with, like, there's a lot of time between now and then. There's a lot of movies that are going to come out. But honestly, for the work that's been put in and the performance that came out, I think it'd be crazy not to have more recognition. He's definitely going to win awards. It's just whether or not it's going to be the Academy Awards, you know? But yeah, man. He's good.
But his supporting cast, I mean, the sort of other three main actors and characters, you had Tom Holland as Telemachus, you had Anne Hathaway as Penelope, and Robert Pattinson as Antinius.
Antinius, yeah.
Out of those three, who do you want to pick on first that sort of maybe captured your attention the most?
Okay, so captured my attention the most, I would 100% be Robert Pattinson as Antinius. I think if we're talking about like top tier performances in this role, I think another standout and another person who's really, really shone has been Robert Pattinson. Obviously, over the last little while, like he's from his early days in Twilight and from his early days as Cedric Diggory in Harry Potter, like there's been a whole lot of growth and a whole lot of change and a whole lot of things that he's come up against and projects that he's starred in. And so he's gone into a lot more experimental roles, a lot more indie cinema and things like that. And then he landed big opportunities like in Tenet, where he was one of the kind of main characters. And then obviously also in the Batman, obviously, as Batman, as Bruce Wayne. And so like he's really kind of everywhere at the minute, but he's everywhere and he's careful in the way that he's approaching roles. Obviously, I think it's also the last year he's like, or this year, 3 movies where he's with Zendaya.
Yes, he had the drama, he has this, and then they're together in Dune.
Dune, yeah, of course. And so
we don't really know who he'll be playing in Dune, but a very similar character to this, I think, because his character in this, Antinius, is such like a sniveling little bastard.
Yes.
Like, I hate him, but I love every moment that he's on screen.
Yeah.
And Pattinson, for a guy that is, and if you ever watched any interview with him, he's quite sort of young-hearted, he's quite quirky, he's quite silly, he's so lovable.
He's a goofball.
And he just transforms into this absolute just menace, just genuinely awful human being on every single level.
Yeah.
And it's got to be, maybe because of how I know him to be as a day-to-day human being, you know, best I can through the internet. But that transformation just shocks me every time. And I think that obviously that benefits him. But Antinius, really, really interesting. I mean, brilliantly written. Do you know much about the original story? Have you read the Odyssey?
I've not. No, I'm a fan of Greek mythology, and I know it in terms of like, you know, really boiled down and adapted storytelling, but I haven't read the Odyssey itself.
The closest I've got to reading it is it's there. Not so if you're watching this, my finger is that book is there. A sort of semi-modern sort of rewrite of Homer's The Odyssey.
Yes.
So I own it because I bought it at Christmas, being like, before the Odyssey, then I could do a great sort of book to screen adaptation and conversation. Not even touched it. I mean, it's gathering dust at this point. So me and Ben do not have the comparisons. And there's a couple things that I know that we'll talk about later. But
yes,
this is, I don't know how he's portrayed in the book, but I imagine obviously it's very similar. I think a sort of a standout for me. I really like the way he interacts with Telemachus the whole way through those early scenes in Ithaca, and we'll talk more about the plot in a moment. But he really stands out for me as his character is really sort of portrayed as who he is in that final scene when he's carrying away. He's been this, you know, this big man, the talk of the town consistently the whole way through, wanting to sort of take Penelope's hand, and then when it actually comes down to it. Doesn't even attempt to string the bow, doesn't even attempt to sort of fight Odysseus. He just stands back, lets it all unfold,
and orders other people to move in his position. He's like, oh, go grab the swords, go grab the spears. Like, the dude just takes a full step back and is just very happy, very willing to sit on the sidelines. And I think he loses the mask at that point, right? Like, he has built up this lie in this world, which I think he almost believes himself, where he's like, I was gonna go and help and I was gonna do this, but he told me stay behind and take care of his wife and his son and do all this sort of stuff. He thought he was this person that he'd invented. And then it all crumbles down when he sees that lie kind of like land in front of his face. I think it was beautiful what was done with the character of Sinon, and how the little tribute, the little like peg thing that he was given.
Oh yes, yeah,
which he switched around with Sinon when they were young. And obviously Odysseus comes back and puts that down in front of him and says, "This is yours. Sinon, told me to give it to you," kind of thing. Now, I know Sinon is not a character that existed in the book The Odyssey. He is a character that has existed in other parts of like this Greek mythology and mythos. But I don't know how fully that kind of like relates into this story, and if there was that kind of like duplicitous double cross aspect of Antinius's character. But I think it was beautifully framed and really well developed in the way that Christopher Nolan kind of explored this story, introduced the character of Sinon, and then had this kind of like opposition, this tension between the characters of Antinius and Sinon, the way that they have two different kind of stories and personas and the way that they operate. I think it was really, really clever the way that they did that, and it really even more highlights just the disgraceful nature of Antinius.
Yeah, my friends sort of had a funny comparison when they messaged me afterwards, and they're like, Antinius was like the original keyboard warrior. Like, this is 1200 BC. This is the guy that would sit behind his desk if he was around now, and type atrocious things on the internet and then never actually sort of say them to your face. Brilliant performance from Robert Pattinson. I would say maybe my second favorite post after Damon. I think really stood out. Someone that surprised me, Tom Holland. I'm really enjoying watching him grow as an actor. Look, absolutely fantastic as Spider-Man. But I would say this is his best performance for me. Yeah. I think No Way Home is a close second. But for me, this is just a standout. He sort of plays this reserved, emotional character that wants to be seen as the successor to Odysseus. He really wants to be able to take the seat on the throne. Yeah. And yet, basically any opportunity before the final moments of the movie, he's sort of either being beaten up by the likes of Antinius or a mentor when he's on the cliffs. He really has to have guidance from Eumaeus, and he's very much feels like a baby still. I mean, he's at the oldest point. He's 22 right at the end of the film, but definitely feels like you're watching him through his sort of learning years. And I think Tom puts in a really powerful emotional performance. I didn't find, the sort of reason this limits me from seeing this as a perfect movie is I didn't have a massive emotional connection to the film. Like, I didn't feel particularly sort of emotionally attached to it. Not that you have to cry to enjoy a movie, but
sure,
I felt like my emotions were pretty much just, this is so cool. This is unbelievable what's happening in front of my eyes. That was kind of like 90% of the emotions I was feeling, except for when Tom was on screen. I really found that he sort of brought out that more empathetic side of me, where I was like, I feel so bad for this character. When he sat with John Berthnall's Menelaus, and he's sort of being told the stories of his father, and Tom is just sort of sat there like quietly crying, and you're just watching these tears roll down his face as Telemachus is trying to sort of stay manly. He isn't really meant to be seen as a character that just breaks down. He wants to stand up like his father would, and yet is just like the rest of us and just breaks down at these stories of his dad. And I think Tom really surprised me. Not the strongest performance by a long way, but I think his strongest performance. And it also, from interviews, I've gathered that Tom would now like to explore more movies like this. I think he'll end up working with Nolan again. Nolan seems to really like him, which is great. And I'd like to go see him. I'd like to see Tom do what Pattinson has done and go do some more like indie, smaller projects.
Yeah, I'd like that.
Yeah.
On the note of Telemachus and the character like Tom Holland plays, I really love everything that you said in the way that he portrayed it and the way that like he was able to be that kind of character that connected emotionally for you more than anyone else in it.
Yeah.
For me, I didn't. I think he did really, really, really well. I don't know that I'd say this like is his career defining performance, but I do think like Tom Holland, okay, has been an actor who's been around for a long time. And so he was doing his thing in Billy Elliot on the stage, and that was like an opportunity for him to do stuff when he was really young. Then he moved on to a project, The Impossible, where it was like about the like tsunami that hits. And his performance in that, despite him being very young, was insane. Like it was so good, it was so emotional, so
He is really
powerful.
good in that. He's really good in that.
And it really connects. And I think he's been an incredible actor his whole life, right? And he's been doing really impressive things. And he is very young and he's still at the start of his career. I think it's almost a shame that, like, obviously himself and Zendaya being a couple, there's often a comparison. And so Zendaya is often kind of like put on this pedestal and then he's kind of placed lower. But the reality is, Tom Holland is at the top of the game. Like, in terms of young actors, people in his field, he's got so much career ahead of him. 100% Nolan's going to call on him again and have him in future projects. I'm sure of that. But for me, the character of like Telemachus, I don't know what it was. There were different things about it that kind of like didn't resonate as intensely. His story was kind of a beeline story, whereas Odysseus, being this primary character, this central character, number one on the call sheet, the primary story, all focusing on him, Telemachus is kind of like just a piece of his story. So it wasn't, I didn't feel that connected. I think Tom Holland did really, really well with it. I thought it was interesting. In some interviews, there were discussions where he was talking. So I think Matt Damon mentions that like Chris Nolan had to step in a couple of times and like stop him and slow him down, and he's doing his like work and doing his kind of choreography for fight scenes and things like this. And it was because he was executing it too cleanly, too perfectly, too well. He is someone who is like a dancer and has obviously now been Spider-Man for many years, and he knows how to deliver and execute. When someone gives him instructions, gives him choreograph, he goes and he does it. And so he was doing that, but he was doing it very clean, and Nolan was like, we want you to be a little bit more rough and ready. This is a character who's not as polished, doesn't know what he's doing, never fought in a war. You know, you need to be this kind of like little step back. So I think all of that kind of created a little bit more of a challenge for Holland to face up against. But I think he did extremely well with it. The other thing I'll say that annoyed me about it, and I don't know, maybe this is a hot take and I'm alone in this, but I just hate his American accent. Everyone else in this film, like Matt Damon was basically talking with his own voice. Penelope Anne Hathaway was basically talking with her own voice. I know Robert Pattinson wasn't speaking with a British accent, but like Tom Holland sounding like Spider-Man and Peter Parker in this role was weird for me. If there was a different...
His American accent is like very Queens like based. Like he has this very specific like suburb accent, American accent.
Yeah.
That is the same. It was the same in Uncharted as well. Like the exact same American accent.
Yeah. I'd say that's the only thing that kind of like pulled me out of it in terms of how his performance was, but it was a thing that constantly got me whenever he came on screen. He's not the center of the movie, he's not the main focus, so it wasn't that big a deal, but like, it just, I couldn't resonate with his character the same way I did with a lot of the others.
Yeah. I know, I totally get that, and he does feel like the sort of the youngest actor on that set as well. Like it is both part because of the performance, like I think being done well, but also the whole time I saw Tom Holland, and I actually had that problem with a lot of the cast. And I maybe once we've spoken about a few more characters, we'll talk about how we thought about the ensemble as a collective. But
sure.
I definitely did see Tom Holland the whole way through, and I was thinking, wow, Tom Holland's doing a really good performance in this scene, or oh look, here comes Tom Holland. I wasn't ever pitching, oh, this is Telemachus.
Yeah.
Like I agree on that. I was kind of drawn out of it. Anne Hathaway, however, who is the sort of fourth and final main star of this movie, I think for a character that is basically behind a screen the whole time, although that is, I don't know what the right word, not opaque. Is it opaque? Yeah. You can see through it, whatever it might be. You don't always see her face, and I was worried. Well, actually, on my first time watching, I didn't feel I connected to Penelope at all because of this screen. And that there is a part of that that's the reason it's there, is because she is royalty and she is separated from the chaos that the likes of Antinius is causing. And as much as Zeus's law, she welcomes these beggars, she's separated from them. And I felt separated from her as a character. But then on a rewatch, kind of was like, well, this is actually very much what Nolan's trying to get across.
Yeah, 100%.
That she is, and I also, a fault of Nolan, and I think how he writes female characters, but she was pretty much only there to wait for Odysseus. But I do think put in a really strong performance, like when she's speaking to Telemachus, when she's telling Antinius off and being like, please don't hurt my son. Like, those moments are incredibly powerful. And I really enjoyed her performance. I think Anne Hathaway is one of our star actresses at the moment. But as a fault of both the character themselves and I think how Nolan works with female characters, I did feel like her only storyline was Odysseus. And I wanted a little bit more individualization from her. Not like I needed 5 to 10 minutes of a Penelope backstory or anything like that, but I wanted maybe more time with her to maybe understand her a bit more. I felt like I was consistently seeing her through the lens of Odysseus. So whilst the performance was really good, maybe it wasn't the character that I connected to as much.
Yeah, I think that's a fair critique. I think her performance was really, really good. I've seen her as being one of the most praised. A lot of people have kind of said that like she's a standout in the film for them. I don't agree. I do think like in terms of standout, you've got Damon, who's really like leading the pack, and then you've got Antinius, Robert Pattinson, who's doing a phenomenal job. I do think everyone brought their A game and really performed and excelled in this film. But I wouldn't say Anne Hathaway's performance as Penelope was the kind of like standout. As you mentioned, where it's kind of like behind the screen and having this kind of like distance and distinction where the audience is maybe not resonating or connecting with her, I do agree. I do think it was very intentional, and it came across to me in that way, and I really enjoyed that. I liked that the audience was almost part of the audience that was in that like feasting throne room, where it's all these suitors that are like, you know, trying to take from her, trying to take her time, trying to take her resources, trying to do whatever, and kind of I felt like that was more immersive to the movie. I felt like it put us more in the room and really gave us more of a connection. I do think as well, you mentioned earlier that like there's no real kind of like growth or change in her character between the kind of 20-year period.
Yeah.
I think that probably largely comes down to just that like there was maybe one scene with her 20 years ago where it's like Odysseus saying goodbye, and then it's just the 20 years later situation. But I agree. I think there wasn't a whole lot of space to shine in that performance when it is almost a background performance and it is an appendage to Odysseus' story. But I think Anne Hathaway did an incredible job with the material that was given to her, with the space she was given. Again, in interviews, I've seen people talk about, I think Tom Holland talked about how even while she was behind the screen and she was doing these things and she wouldn't be seen on camera, she put a whole lot of effort into still delivering a really top-notch performance, even though that wasn't even going to be kind of on the camera or the focus or anything like that. So I think she gave it 110%. It's just that's not where the story focus was. And so it let it down a little bit in that aspect, but I think it beautifully played into Odysseus' story.
I agree that maybe a positive, maybe a negative for me is that the way that she intertwines with Odysseus' story is brilliant. But yeah, as a singular character for me, maybe I was a little bit underwhelmed, but can totally understand why people enjoyed her performance. Sure. This cast is stacked. I mean, absolutely every A-lister that you can think of is in this movie. It's ridiculous. We cannot spend 5 to 10 minutes on every single person.
Yes. But
there are about 10 or 12 people that I will say a few words about.
Okay.
And just sort of get quick thoughts on all of them. Lupita Nyong'o, who played Helen of Troy, and a name that we couldn't figure out before we started recording, Clytemnestra.
I'm glad you were the one attempting
Yeah.
that.
I'll cut that around and it'll sound perfect. Um, anyway, so she played the twin sisters.
Yes.
And I really liked both of her performances. I mean, she might have 30 seconds of screen time.
Sure.
And I'm so glad that when we had her on screen, she puts in such a commanding performance because of all of the people that maybe were criticizing castings like this. We don't need to get into why, but racism.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that when she was on screen, I was like beaming. I was like, I'm so happy that. I mean, I've always loved Lupita. I've adored her, and I'm so glad that she sort of got to shine in those little moments.
Yeah.
I think, when that's that really powerful scene where it's like, this is the face of the woman that launched 1,000 ships, and then John Berthnall's character moves her face, and it's like, well, maybe now 500, and she's got these effects of war, basically, of this war that is happening because of her on her face, and she just looks so diminished by it all, but all angry at the same time.
Yeah.
I thought she was brilliant. I really, really enjoyed her character.
She was great. I think her performance, more in her facial expressions, more in her physicality than her dialogue even, was the thing that sold it. And I think, yeah, she did a great job as both characters. I think there's more fun to be had in her twin sister's role, and obviously the engagement that she has with Agamemnon. But yeah, I thought it was brilliant. She was really good.
And I think that sort of singular scene as well, where she's screaming as her daughter is being sacrificed, and she's holding on to this. Like when I rewatched it, obviously knowing what happens between her and Agamemnon later on in the film, when you sort of witness this sort of first encounter with her, you're like, you just know she is boiling inside, but sort of withholds herself for years on end, plotting this demise of her husband. And I think that just singular moment of her screaming was brilliant. And there's a few good scenes with characters that are just screaming and sort of letting their heart out. And we'll speak about how that sort of comes into play with the plot later on. But how about Zendaya? Because Athena is the only god. Well, I think Nolan's depiction of the gods in this is really interesting, because I'd read somewhere or heard somewhere that he was juggling with the idea of whether he has the gods more prominent in the film, whether they are literal depictions of those characters.
Yeah.
And Athena is the only one that we have in a human form. She's the only one that is actually there. And Zendaya, very limited again. I mean, has a couple minutes screen time, but so important for the evolution of Odysseus and his character and his journey. We find out later on in the film that Athena, Zendaya doesn't look anything like the statues of Athena that they have, or even the little pin that he wears.
Yeah.
But she
doesn't
has
matter,
the face.
though, does it?
No. But she has the face of the woman that was killed in the Battle of Troy.
Yes.
And my kind of understanding is that that's just how Odysseus has projected Athena looks like. So he has this guilt. That's how I saw it, is that, this girl that was killed and beheaded at the end of the Battle of Troy in front of Odysseus has then followed him as a sort of guilty conscience the whole way through.
Sure.
So that's how I took it. One of my friends took it as that's just how it's shown for the audience, that this person is Athena. My understanding was that that's how Odysseus is that's sort of like a memory that's been attached onto him because of this death that he saw in front of his face.
Yeah.
And Athena maybe was always talking to him, and he just put a face to a name, as it were, a face to a voice. But how did you see that depiction, or how did you see Zendaya as Athena in general?
Well, in two parts, approaching the kind of like performance by Zendaya. So Zendaya, I hear that she was the only one that got perfect on her performance in this film, and obviously from Nolan, that is a high level of praise. Often it is just kind of a nod or a good or a whatever, but like she got perfect for her performance in this. And while a lot of people have been commenting on that and highlighting it, let's be fair, there wasn't a whole lot to do. I think a lot of her performance was kind of a nod or look and things like that. And I think she did those things very, very well and delivered on the part that she had. But again, kind of like Lupita Nyong'o's character and so many other characters, it's very limited. It is very much an appendage to the wider story. It is tiny in comparison, fractional compared to everything else. So I think she did well in her portrayal and the performance. And I think her best scene, if we're talking about like her acting, Zendaya's acting, I think her best scene is that big reveal when we see the kind of like siege on Troy, and then this girl is killed and she's begging for her
Mm.
life kind of thing. I think that was beautiful. To approach the other side of your question, where you were talking about kind of like that character and the way that they're developing it, and kind of even my interpretation, you mentioned maybe it being Odysseus's projection and his guilt or his shame. I think that
Mm.
that can be true. I think also the thing that's kind of played in my mind, Zeus's law is such a central thing of this movie,
Yeah.
right? And it is the breakdown of Zeus's law, the betrayal of Zeus's law. Matt Damon's Odysseus going into this kingdom and breaking Zeus's law to be able to do this thing. Another part of Zeus's law is obviously welcoming people in, feeding beggars, treating everyone as though they could be a god. And so
Mm.
when they have that reveal, that revelation that this young woman was someone who was killed in the siege on Troy, I think for me that very much came across as, again, the kind of like emphasis on Zeus's law, that they stormed this city and they killed this person and they did not obey or adhere to Zeus's law. They treated
Mm.
these people who they should have treated with respect, love, compassion, and as though they were the gods themselves,
Mm.
as nothing, and they just chopped their head off, or they treated them cruelly, or did whatever they did. And I imagine much worse things than what we see in the performance and the portrayal. So I think for me it was almost a thing of like Athena as a member of the gods, as one of the people of the gods, is showing Matt Damon the error of his ways and being like,
Mm.
okay, this is a thing that you did in breaking Zeus's law, and that is kind of like then throughout the rest of the story the thing that helps him come to that final realization and to
Yeah.
ultimately be better.
Mm. And yeah, I will talk about more of the depiction of the gods, but I do like that Zendaya played Athena. She felt very compassionate, despite obviously, as you said, sort of these atrocious acts are happening upon her city and herself as a person. But
Mhm.
I agree, limited performance. I think the perfect from Nolan is slightly misleading, because I imagine it might be, that scene where she just looks. I think where they're coming out of when they're in Hades, and she sort of just looks and nods at him. I think it's
Yeah,
there. It's like
yeah,
that could be where the perfect was. It's
yeah,
like, it doesn't need much, just a little like nod and like
a
recognition of
hundred
whatever,
percent.
and then that could be Nolan going, perfect, let's move on.
Yeah,
And
so
then
that's a very
that
different
story,
thing
yeah.
than Matt Damon having to deliver dialogue about what is the siren song sound like.
Mm,
That's a completely different performance to look over disappointed, nod. Like, I'm not
yeah.
trying to diminish her performance in any way. I think Zendaya is, again, one of the best actors that is in this kind of like generation of upcoming actors.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think that's maybe a blown out of proportion kind of thing. I'd like to see where it goes when she has a more central role in a Nolan
Yeah.
a Nolan film in future.
Yeah, I can pretty much guarantee in Nolan's next feature, 50% of this cast are returning. Like,
Yeah.
I think he also really enjoyed working with them and
Oh,
sort of
100%.
finding new younger talents, where he's like, in his mind, he's like, oh, I can turn these people into something fantastic. I mean, most of them are pretty good anyway, but like, he has a great cast that he can use for another sort of 20 years
But
on
I
top
do
of the
think
people
I
he
think
already
that's one of
has.
the most beautiful things about Nolan, where he's able to coax out these incredible performances, right? Like in
Mm,
Oppenheimer, Robert Downey Jr. won an Oscar for that performance. Robert Downey Jr. again was kind of like famous as a child actor, had his dark times and went away and then came
mm,
back, and has had like this incredible success in the MCU. But I don't think it was until Nolan got his hands on him in Oppenheimer that he really like pulled out that incredible performance. And I think the
mm.
same can be said of these other performers that Nolan gathers together. I think he just
Yeah.
has a magic touch when it is getting the best of people and pulling out incredible performances.
Yeah, and I think, not to get sidetracked too much, and this month will be full of Marvel conversation anyway. I still think, by the way, Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of Iron Man is one of the best character portrayals ever. Like I think ever. That man is, and I think people look down on Marvel as like, oh, it's superheroes. You can't have these generational performances.
Yeah.
Quick note, Robert, I'm sure you're listening, all right, and I'm sure you need to hear this, but I think his portrayal as Iron Man is one of the best sort of character portrayals out there.
Oh, I agree. I think
Um,
he should have got the Oscar for Endgame. What
yeah,
a disappointment.
I know. but we could argue about that for eons to come. Now, a character that I'm going to be honest, this is the first character where immediately afterwards I was like, I didn't feel their impact at all. Really had no effect on me. Was Charlize Theron's Calypso. Now, I would like to say that this is where I do know the difference from the book, is that in the book, Calypso is basically Odysseus' sex slave. She is there to sort of be his and worship him while he's on this journey of recovery. And they kind of switched it to this where she is more like his nurse almost. You know, has the lotus flowers, is sort of muddling his memory because she's in love with him, but is very much now has a role of physical healing or like emotional healing rather than being like a physical companion to Odysseus. So that was a big change that I noticed. And not that Nolan, apart from maybe Oppenheimer, but there's very little intimate moments in this movie. And I'm kind of glad that he did that. I don't think it needed it. But I don't feel like I gained much from Calypso as a character. I think, again, all of those interactions on the beach was just about Odysseus and him finding his own brain, like his own memories of Troy. And once he'd healed physically, coming off of eating that lotus flower, which I depicted was the thing that was sort of refraining him from remembering where he was. I felt like Calypso was pretty much just there, someone to share the screen with him. That's going to be my opinion. And then as Charlize Theron is an actress in this, I think she's given up. I genuinely think for the last couple roles, I don't know what Charlize is doing. Like, hey, look, she's a brilliant actress. She's had a fantastic career. I think she's just enjoying herself at the moment, which is great. But I don't feel like the impact, like, I felt like she had more fun on Apex than she did with this. It felt incredibly reserved.
Interesting.
And I just didn't connect with either Charlize or Calypso. And again, the whole time saw Calypso as Charlize Theron. I never once fell into that sort of trance of, oh my word, this is a new character.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I can't defend Theron. I can't defend it. I think you're right. When I was talking about Matt Damon and his performance and kind of like the solo moments of this film, like we've kind of commented with Zendaya having very little to do, similar thing with Charlize Theron as Calypso, there was very little to do. So in my mind, it is almost solo performances from Matt Damon when it's in scenes with either of these characters. I think it is almost a blank board, a blank canvas to kind of perform against. But I do think maybe it could have been interchangeable. You could have had anyone kind of step into that role and do that. Again, I don't know how much comes down to not developing out the story. I didn't have much of an idea of who Calypso is going in, and even less so coming out. I didn't know if she was a demigod. I didn't know if she was a god. I didn't know if she was a trickster, a demon, whatever. Like, I had no idea. I just knew she was someone who kind of kept him, and like a witch. I almost, in my mind, it was like she's kind of another witch like Cersei, who is just kind of giving him this flower, taking away his memories, and then keeping him as her prisoner. So that was kind of where it was in my head. But I have to agree. I don't think there's anything to write home about in the performance or the character.
Which is a shame, because those moments where they're on the beat is so important and transformative to the story as a whole. Because Nolan's always played with not just time, but sort of how he puts pieces of narrative together. There's a lot of jumping back and forth, and these are sort of, this reminded me of the sort of reverse moments in Tenet, or the black and white moments in Memento. It's like trying to piece that story together, and it's so important. And then when she was on screen, I was like, oh, this is another 3 minutes where I'm kind of just getting a break from the movie, as it were. I really sort of fell out over those scenes. So apologies, Charlize. Maybe go back and do a Mad Max movie.
Also, to speak to your bigger point of it, though, because you've mentioned a couple of times now where there were some characters who you just couldn't kind of like disassociate from who they are as actors. I think that's almost a double-edged sword of when you have like these big name talents, right? Like when you've had someone who you've seen in so many movies and they are now just like a famous figure who, like, there is so much to them. I think that it becomes a thing where you're looking at these ones. And I think almost there is another kind of like a step removed where all these characters are really difficult to remember and understand who they are. So coming into this Greek mythology and trying to figure out who's Sinon, who's Antinius, who is Menelaus, who is Telemachus, like it just becomes a really challenging thing to kind of like put all those pieces together. So I think it is easier when you have those famous faces, which is one of the great things about Nolan movies. He can get so many incredible names, but also one of the challenges in something like this where it is just like, well, that's Charlize Theron.
Yeah.
That's Tom Holland.
I would have really liked certain characters, I think like Calypso, to just be an actor or an actress that he found.
Yeah.
You know, rather than, and I'm not saying he specifically sought out putting A-listers in all of these roles, but with a lot of Nolan's, he kind of goes and asks the actor to be in his film.
Yes.
Because he's at such a stage, he doesn't need to field auditions, and I'm sure there were plenty of auditions for minor roles. But all of these people, I'm sure he just reached out to and went,
yes,
this I have a vision of you being this character.
Yeah.
And I think that does negatively affect the film. And it's such an ensemble, and to no fault of his own, these names aren't always easy to remember. And I am glad with the dialogue that it was not dumbed down, but slightly modernized.
Yes.
I think that helped. I think if Robert Eggers was doing this movie, I would genuinely have absolutely no clue, because it would all be in, you know, the exact dialogue of 1200 BC, and it'd just be absolutely impossible to follow along.
Yeah.
So I do think the adaptations that Nolan has made to make this a bit more modern was very good.
Yeah.
I saw no issue with that.
I agree.
We've got a couple more characters I want to quickly go through. Samantha Morton as Cersei, probably one of my favorite performances of the entire film.
Yeah,
I
it was
think,
stunning.
You know, has one scene basically, like one long scene. She gets a decent chunk to sort of put in her performance. Apparently got a standing ovation on set, which is unheard of in any performance or any production. People don't applaud once you do a scene. You know, maybe when it's your final one, it's like, oh, that's a wrap for Samantha Morton, everyone give her a clap. This was like, people were so impressed with what she was doing on the day as Cersei, and I have to agree. And we'll talk about that scene in depth in a moment.
Yes.
But
where's her perfect? Where's her perfect? Like that really was phenomenal. It was incredible.
Yeah.
I think it was incredible. Yeah.
I just completely outstanding. I'm trying to think. I don't know if I've ever seen her. I mean, she's in John Carter, which I've seen, but I didn't. You know, at the time, I wouldn't have known that she was in it. I've not watched her and gone, "Oh, that's Samantha Morton" before. She's in Minority Report. She's in Fantastic Beasts. She's in The Whale. But I never
have you
really
seen Have you seen The Walking Dead?
No, I've seen 2 episodes.
Yeah, okay. So I would say the biggest and most kind of like memorable performance from her for me was in The Walking Dead. And she plays this kind of like character. So it's in very late seasons of the show. It maybe is like 7, 8, 9 or whatever. And she plays this really, really captivating, terrifying character. I think she's phenomenal in that. I can't say that I remember her from a bunch of other things. Minority Report, is she like the precogs?
She plays Agatha, so she's a
precog. Yeah, okay. No, I do remember that. She was very good in that, but that was obviously a long, long time ago.
Yes, she's got a shaved head in that, and she's connected up.
Yeah. No, she was good. But yeah, this is definitely again a standout performance for me. I think it was like a career defining. Not to throw all these words around, but you know, Nolan just does it. I guess
he does just naturally sort of bring that out of people.
It's crazy.
John Leguizamo as Eumaeus.
Yeah.
Loved him. I thought he was great. Really want to see him get that supporting actor nod. We are 6-7 months away from the Oscars, okay? But he's got to be up there for me. I mean, absolutely phenomenal. And I don't think a lot of people knew that he had this in him. I feel like I've always known, because he's in a lot of more digestible movies, I'd say. Like, I've never really seen him in many serious roles. Like, he's best known for his voice work in Ice Age.
Yeah.
He's in Violent Night. He plays sort of the ringleader of the crew there. He's in The Menu. He's in Zootopia. He's very much always the sort of comedic relief in a lot of his films.
Yeah.
But I think with actors like that, like they always have the ability, and they want to show the ability that they can really take control of a scene. And I think Eumaeus as a character, but also what John's performance is just ridiculous how good it is. Really, really liked it.
One weird thing in his performance, I also really liked it, so I don't want it to just be like a focus of like I thought it sucked. I thought one weird thing was at the end where it was like Odysseus had defeated everyone in the room, and he's like, "Did he do it? Is he alive?
Yeah.
Did he win?" And I'm like, you've known everything up to this point. You know who's walking around, who's doing what. Like, what? Why are you? I thought that was a kind of weird bit of dialogue, but I think his hurt performances when he's like being thrown around and bullied, his performances where he's like teaching Telemachus and all these things, beautiful. I think he did a great job.
A really interesting arc as a character, because his first time on screen, I hated him because he throws the dog off the cliff.
Yes.
And that is such a bold way to introduce a character. It's like, oh, these cute puppies. I'm like, oh, Odysseus is gonna like when they're talking about this dog, and it's like, oh, your father was here on this cliff, sort of choosing his hunting dog, and he's like, oh yeah, don't want that one. And he throws it, and I thought he was like chucking it to the side, and Nolan puts in the sound of this dog going that as it falls, and I'm like, oh my god, what an awful way to introduce a character.
It's genuinely almost like a blink and you miss it moment as well, because I was looking at the screen and I saw it happen and I was like, did that really just happen? And then he goes to throw the second dog and Odysseus stops him, and I'm like, oh no, damn, he really did. That was crazy.
I don't think I've ever had a 180 on a character like that before. I mean, immediate hate to then ending up loving him. Bold move, but that's kind of crazy. John Bernthal as Menelaus, gotta be totally honest, a totally fine performance for me. Like, not the most impactful character. Has that really big scene with Telemachus where he's sort of speaking about Odysseus. But I saw John Bernthal the whole way through that performance. Yeah,
I was going to say, that's exactly what I kind of felt. Exactly as you've said this whole time, just seeing the same kind of like actor behind the performance. Again, I saw kind of Frank Castle. I saw, you know, John Bernthal. And that was just kind of it. It was just like this tough guy who's like speaking with a gritty, kind of gruff voice.
He does do the same performance in pretty much all his movies.
I was just about to say, I think the best performance I've seen out of Bernthal is in The Bear. I think that's a character that has a lot more layers to it than this did. So I don't think I needed to see more, but like it would have been nice. But it was good. It was fine.
I did not that I dislike. It's just look, there's so many people. Some of them are just going to be, that was fine. Yeah, you did an alright job.
Yeah.
Benny Safdie is Agamemnon. The man behind us, if you're watching this on either on Spotify or YouTube, by the way, quick reminder to check out both. Give us a follow, hit subscribe. Look, maybe has one of the coolest moments in this movie, and we'll start talking about plot points. But that first sort of siege of Troy, when the gates open and he's just standing there, so much aura. It was unbelievable.
It's insane.
I couldn't tell you that it was Benny Safdie.
No.
You know, it actually would have kind of been nice to go in not knowing who it was, because the whole time, even though you don't see his face, apart from when they're in Hades, like, and you sort of see a bit more light around his eyes, but it's so blackened most of the time. I quite like that sort of anonymity. It's like he's almost like a demigod, basically. Like, he's such a unit, this king. It would have been really cool to not know that was Benny Safdie until like after the film, and Nolan be like, "Oh yeah, that was your like nerdy director that you guys love."
I can speak from that point of view. I didn't know it was. I didn't know going in. I didn't look at the casting, and so when I saw Agamemnon appear on screen, I was like, "When's this guy going to take off his helmet?" Because I have no idea who it is. And like, there's just such presence, such intensity, and it really does come across as almost this is a god among men, you know. And it was very impressive. And then seeing pictures of Benny Safdie when he's in his other performances, I'm just like, this is wild. Like, that's fun.
And because I annoyingly now with like the content that I do online, I always know the entire cast. I watch every trailer because I'm reacting to it, I'm talking about it. And going in, the first time I saw it, I was chuckling to myself because I was like, "That's Bowser Jr. You're like just the most like vicious man in this battle, and it's Bowser Jr. under there." So that would have been cool to go in not knowing it was him. And you do get one flash of his face when he gets stabbed like under the jaw.
Yes.
But like as a physical performance, pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't know if it needed to be Benny Safdie, but it again didn't really, it's not Benny doing the performance. It feels like Agamemnon, and I think that's sort of how the character's written and how he looks as well. I love the design. By the way, of all of the characters, I really, really think set design and costume design is truly brilliant. In this
I was
film.
going to raise stuff like that later on to talk about kind of like set design, costume, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, 100%. But to kind of like tie that into some of your other points as well. Yeah, this felt like Agamemnon the entire time. And you're saying even that it felt like Agamemnon, even though you knew who it was under the mask, but you kind of like had an idea. I think that was what was missing with a lot of these other characters. This guy felt like who it was supposed to be. So I think that was one of the things that was really unique about his performance.
Yeah. Himesh Patel's a really interesting addition to this cast because not in any promotional material. I mean, genuinely, if you told me that he was in this movie, I wouldn't have believed you going in because I'm like, I don't think in a single trailer I saw Eurylocus.
I'm not sure of his name. I don't even remember them saying his name in the movie, to be honest. But
no, but he's in it a lot. He's like the second hand to Odysseus, particularly on the boat.
Yeah.
And the men on the boat always look to him for like confirmation, like, when Odysseus says, right, we're gonna go down the coast and look for somewhere to stop, and one of the other men is like, well, what if they have boats? And then it's Himesh Patel's character that's like gives them a nod. It's like, no, it's okay, let's go do this.
Yeah.
An unbelievable performance.
Yeah.
I really, really liked Himesh Patel
100%.
in this. As the polar opposite of Odysseus, kind of reluctantly follows Zeus's law because how much it's hounded into him, but will throw it out the window at any opportunity. Will lead that pillaging party. Will defy the gods and eat the cows, and is always that man at the front. Really, really liked Himesh Patel in this.
Yeah, I thought he was great. I like Himesh Patel an awful lot. I really like him. Yesterday is one of my favorite movies that he's done. I think it's fantastic.
I love Yesterday. It's
great
so
movie.
good.
Yeah.
Himesh Patel singing Beatles song. What more could you want?
It's beautiful. He should have had a song in this, They should have been singing while they were on the boats or something. But no, it was really good. I thought he was great.
Elliot Page, I'm going to say overall, probably top 3 performance for me. Like, has like 1 minute of screen time, sort of split across 2 moments. Is Sinon. A moment that I missed first time round was Sinon not knowing that they were inside the horse at Troy. I didn't know that Sinon didn't know that originally.
Yeah.
And like was left behind to sort of hand over this gift. I always thought that Sinon was in on the invasion tactic.
Yeah.
I'd missed that sort of. There is a moment of dialogue on a rewatch I picked up where Sinon's like, "You lied to me. I did. Why would you sort of mislead me about this?"
Sure.
And then Odysseus is speaking. This is when they're in Hades later on, and saying, "I heard you lie for me. You won us the war. You are the main reason that we are here now."
Yeah.
But I think Elliot Page, phenomenal performance. Really sort of youthful, wanting to live up and be Odysseus's like front man on that beach of Troy, and then the return when covered in sort of black sand and mud, and you can really feel that hatred that Sinon has. That you've disobeyed Zeus's law. You are the one person that's been preaching it to us this whole time, and you just left me there on the beach to die. Not that Odysseus, I don't think Odysseus could have done anything about it, but I really liked that Elliot Page was in this, and I'm so glad is sort of getting. I feel like is getting a lot of recognition for their role. Was in Inception.
Yes.
That was pre-transition, and I've listened to so many interviews from Elliot Page, being like, just has never once felt themselves, and now I feel we are going to tap into that era of Elliot Page's acting, where it's like they feel human themselves, and they can really put that into their performances and I think Sinon's a standout for me.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved even their 90 seconds of screen time.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think Elliot Page, I think one of the most fascinating actors right now in terms of being able to see their transition through like things like the Umbrella Academy. You get to see in the first season where, you know, obviously pre-transition, and then later seasons where they have that change and get to experience more of themselves. And in this, I thought they were actually fantastic. Yeah, again, a very short kind of performance, but one of the most believable and one of the most kind of captivating, where you do go, oh, this is Sinon, not this is Elliot Page. You have to learn the name of the character first to get that. But I think they did really, really well across both scenes. The Hades scene was a standout for me, but 100%.
Yeah, adore it. Mia Goth is also in this. I mean, don't know the purpose of that character at all. Her performance, fine, barely on screen. But
to show more of Antinius being a dick. That is all it's for.
But that's, you know, I'm like, is she literally just there to have that scene where she kisses Antinius despite him wanting to be with Penelope? And then she's a little bit bitchy towards Penelope, where she's like, oh, shouldn't you be up there? And then they have that reversed role moment when Penelope's like, actually, don't you belong down there? I'm like, that was cool. Yeah. But all the moments feel like they're shared. Like, it's just, you know, Mia Goth was there for me.
Yeah.
I don't think that's her own fault, but
yeah, I don't think it was a crazy big break for her. I would be interested to see her maybe in another Nolan movie down the line. But yeah, I think she's a good performer across a lot of things. But this character almost feels like every other character that I've seen her play. I think Mia Goth is almost one of those people who steps into one character and plays that kind of person each time.
Yeah, she plays a pretty great role in Frankenstein, which is there at that IMAX poster there.
Yeah.
I think she's pretty great in Frankenstein, but I don't know much about her as an actress. I think she does stuff with Eggers as well. I'm pretty sure she's in Nosferatu.
She's in a lot of horror.
Yeah. Oh, of course, she's in Pearl.
Yeah.
Which she's brilliant in, actually. I do really think she's great in Pearl. Ryan Hurst, I didn't know was in this. He plays Mentor, who, when I first heard his name was Mentor, and he was the mentor, I kind of put one and two, two together. I was like, oh, that's where that comes from.
Yeah.
I love Ryan Hurst. I felt really sad seeing him on screen because he's just lost the role of Kratos in God of War this week due to a bicep injury. I've posted videos about that, so if you guys are interested, check out my TikTok. I've been speaking about sort of how heartbroken I am for the man. But he's brilliant in this, to be honest.
Does he even have lines of dialogue?
He has a couple when they're entering the boat, and Telemachus is like, "Have I told you have eyes like Athena?" And he's like, "Oh, you've told me you've mentioned it." But I think his physical performance is really cool.
Yeah.
And he has that moment where they fight the priests, sort of the fake priests in that temple.
Yes.
That Antinius is sent, and he sort of has that quick fight and then dying moment. Again, maybe not much to perform, but as a physical performance, I quite liked, and I just like Ryan Hurst, to be honest. So I was glad to see him in there.
Yeah, I think physically I thought it was good, but obviously there wasn't anything that kind of like stood out to me in terms of dialogue or performance other than that. But yeah.
And then last one before we finally get onto like the plot of the movie. Travis Scott. Felt weird when I found out that he was going to be in this movie, but to be honest, him playing a bard makes complete sense. I've heard Nolan sort of speak about rappers and the comparison between rapping and poetry. I think cool. I was like, because it opens up on him and it kind of he has two very important scenes. So Travis Scott sort of being the opening face of the Odyssey was not something that I expected. But I think it's a fine little inclusion. He's in it so little it doesn't take me out of the movie. I wasn't even really locked in at that point per se. So yeah, cool that he played a bard, I think. And I know they're really good friends. So that was a neat inclusion, but no real effect to me on that one.
Yeah, I didn't have anything kind of that stood out with it, to be honest. So
no, they're there for moments on screen. Right, that is like every single character. Yeah, take a breather, everybody.
Oh.
We are going to go into sort of the plot of the film. I think the best way to do this is I've kind of broken it down by 10 of the biggest moments. And I thought we can kind of address that, and as we go along, if you have additional points that you want to add, definitely do so. The first moment of this film that really captured me, and it happens way earlier on than I thought it was going to, is the interaction with the Cyclops. That's like our first mythical interaction that happens within the first like 20-30 minutes of the film.
Wow.
I feel like it's really early on, and the Cyclops is actually called
Polyphemus.
Polyphemus. And first of all, I think this is basically a horror movie. I mean, it's an epic adventure in itself, but everyone's been saying, "Oh, I'd like to see Nolan do it." I think this is Nolan's horror film. Like, it's genuinely, that Cyclops sequence was terrifying. First viewing, I don't think I breathed that entire time. I really liked the way the Cyclops looked. Kind of had this like morphed face where its nose was to the side, and it had like how humans have their like landscape eyes. I don't know. And it's kind of been like shifted vertically rather than having an eye that was just the other direction.
Yeah,
you guys
100%.
know what I mean. So I think looked cool. I'm a huge sound design guy. Like that's like one of my favorite aspects of movies. Thought that entire sequence was incredible. I mean, when it's screaming, when it gets jabbed in the eye, powerful stuff.
Chilling. Yeah, genuinely, really, really good. And I think fantastic. Again, one of the things that stands out so much in this movie, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a lot as we go through these 10 scenes and however else, is how much is practical, how much was done on set, on location, with real props and real things going on. This was filmed in a cave. It was filmed in Nestor's cave. It was a really difficult place to get to. They had to build all these different set designs and different pieces. They put in a bunch of sheep to get them in there because there was nothing in the cave. They built a 60-foot puppet of a giant Cyclops.
I've added a marker to this pod. If you guys aren't watching, just turn on the video for a sec. I'm going to try and remember to put on an image in front of us now of this puppet. It's just insane. Ridiculous.
It's insane. And I'm sure that added so much dimension for the actors and performers that were playing against it, because here's us watching this movie back and like it's the fully realized vision, but they were in a cave with a giant puppet that was whipping its hands at them. Like, that's still ominous as hell and terrifying and insane. So yeah, I think it really does play into the horror tropes. It really does become that kind of like horror almost a film. I think it was a phenomenal scene. It was beautifully done and just incredible and just chilling.
And I saw Nolan speaking about his love for Guillermo del Toro, and they're very good friends. I saw a lot of the pale man from Pan's Labyrinth in this.
Yeah.
That sort of disfigured, you sort of see the skin, but it's kind of humanistic in a way.
Yeah.
And the performance and representation of the Cyclops it's just like a big baby. It doesn't really know what it's doing. It doesn't really talk. Yes, we kind of get a nod that some of them heard it speaking. And you kind of hear this like parcel tongue almost when it's turned their back from them at one point when it's injured. Yeah. It's I felt so sorry for it like the entire time. And I was like, it really just wants to live, Odysseus. You don't have to fire your arrow at it.
Yeah.
I think an incredible scene.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting as well, because this is one of the scenes where, like, there is, in previous adaptations, whenever they have the kind of Cyclops, this is where there's a moment for a joke, where it is kind of like Odysseus attacks the thing, and then it's like, what's your name? And he's like, nobody. And then the Cyclops ends up being attacked later on and goes out and tells the other giants, or the other Cyclops on the island, someone's attacking, I'm being attacked, and they're like, who's attacking you? And he says, nobody, and then they all walk away. So this is a scene that is usually intended as like a little bit of comic relief and as like a kind of lighter moment in the whole story. But here it is like, it just pulls you further in. And it is gripping and insane. And if it is that first 20 or 30 minutes, as you say, I think perfectly positioned to really pull you more into the story in that way too.
Mm-hmm. And that whole sort of chase sequence down to the beach as well is just ridiculously intense. And we'll speak about where we want to see Nolan go in the future, but if it's something like that for 100 minutes, I'd be so down.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. Um, the sort of next part that I think was pretty prominent for me was the first Battle of Troy, the first look that we get of them going to Troy. So I don't think, is the horse scene later on, the Trojan horse later, or do we visit that first? I'm
So at the
trying to
very
remember.
opening of the movie, we see the Trojan horse in the sand, and it's
Yeah,
like buried there. We see it being taken away, but I don't think we see until later on that
yeah,
the horse is opened up and they get out of it.
yeah. So we kind of have like a um. So is that first scene of Troy, that Battle of Troy? I'm trying to make sure I get it the right way around. Because the opening of the gates then is after they come out of the horse, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
So that first bit of Troy is when Sinon's interacting with them on the beach. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, the first couple of minutes of the film, Sinon interacts with a couple of horsemen on the beach as they're
Yeah.
coming and approaching the Trojan horse. So that is like almost the opening scene of the movie.
Mm.
And that was, it was interesting.
Um. Okay, so we'll return to Troy later on then when that actually has its sort of full impact.
It's
The
hard to
next,
approach, isn't it? Because it is non-linear, and so there's a lot
yeah,
of it that's happening out of time, and so
yeah.
it is a very typical Nolan experience in terms of the story, kind of jumping around the
Mm.
place. Yeah.
So the next sort of mythical interaction that we had
Mm-hmm.
was a name that I'm going to muck up. The Lastrygonians, I think it is. Basically, the really
Lystrigonians.
tall metal people.
Yes.
Um, who I'm going to be totally honest. We had a quick conversation about this a few days ago. Um, I didn't find them particularly captivating as a mythical interaction.
Mm.
We saw a lot of that scene in the trailer, in the main trailer. Sort of these absolutely huge giant creatures whacking them out the way.
Yeah.
And I believe in the book are much more depicted as cannibals.
Yes.
And I think Odysseus interacts with them sort of being a lot more hideous, not just sort of sat behind these big metal masks.
Mm.
But do you want to just explain to the listeners sort of how they created that large image? Because as I saw it, I thought the whole time I was like, it's quite impressive how huge these people are, and I didn't
Yeah.
know, because I know Nolan likes to do a lot of stuff practically. But you
Yes.
tell them how he did it.
Yeah, so for the Lystrigonians, it is a very brief scene in terms of the movie. I think this is one of the things that suffered the most in terms of like the actual story behind it not getting to be told, because they had to pick and choose where they were going to spend time,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so with this, it was just one of the lesser things, but it is very impressive. You do see it on the posters. That is one of the most iconic posters, where it's a tiny little Odysseus, and then it's all these big giant silver knights. And then, like, in the movie, you get that again, the full weight of that scene as it hits you, because you've got this massive proportional dissonance between these two characters. And what actually happened from, again, a couple of interviews that I watched, appears to be all of this is practical, all of this was in camera, and all of it was played out in that way. But what happened is they had 7 foot tall, like, stunt men who were performing in the full armor as the Lystrigonians, and then they swapped out the main actors who were playing Odysseus and his army for 5 foot tall stunt people who are going to come in and be like the stunt doubles for those characters. And so already you've got kind of a 2 foot difference that's there, but then on top of that they play with the forced perspective, and so they set them up in such a way that it really, really does look like you've got these very, very small figures and these massive warriors who are absolutely attacking, destroying them. And then I don't know how on earth they were able to do everything else, because that's the initial scene, the fight in the forest and the things that are happening there. But then we've got them chasing them out again onto the beach, again destroying their boats, doing all these things, and just really, really wild things that happen with it. So it was very impressive the way that they were able to pull it all off.
Yeah. Again, I don't think it was probably one of my least favorite interactions of the film, but
Sure.
still quite like captivating. And it's like Odysseus and his crew are so unprepared for this journey home, and they're so low on rations and they're desperate to sort of survive.
Yeah.
That we as the viewer don't really know how much of this is actually happening. Like if these creatures and beings and myths actually are real, or if it's sort of the crew's depiction of what they're encountering.
I I've got to say, for me, it felt very emotional. While like the interaction is short and it's brief, it did feel like a very emotional and kind of captivating scene, especially when they came out to the beach and they had three boats that were like there,
Yes.
Odysseus and his men and these other people in the crew. And so they'd obviously come through the situation with the Cyclops, and a lot of them survived. And then they were like, "Oh, Odysseus, you've cursed us. Like, you've attacked the son of Poseidon, and now you've cursed us, and now we're all going to be in a bad situation." And then this thing happens, and it seems almost like a confirmation of that curse. And so not only do they face these terrible creatures, but they lose two of the boats and all of the men that were in those boats.
Yeah.
So for me, I was like gripped, and I was like, this is a very emotional and hard moment in the story, because we've got Odysseus feeling incredibly upset at having lost all his men, but we've got characters like Himesh Patel and the rest of the men being like, he's doing this to us, it's his fault. And so it felt like a real turning point in the movie and the story for me.
But then what comes after that, what follows, is probably again one of the coolest moments of the film, because they're traveling along the island and this is like, we have to stop. He kind of gets warned that they might have boats, and he's like, well, we have to go find land. And then they spot this house on the hill.
Yeah.
And they're like, right, let's land there. We'll send up a party. This is then where Himesh Patel says, Odysseus, you stay with the boats. We don't trust you, okay?
Yeah.
You've got us into these bad scenarios. We've lost all our men. We're going to go up and see who's up there. And they arrive and they encounter Cersei, who, of course, is played by Samantha Morton.
Mm-hmm.
And what ensues is one of the most grotesque things I think I've ever seen. Absolutely incredible, where this character is like, and she says this to Odysseus later on, it's like, you sent tired, hungry men into my home, tens of them. Of course I'm going to be terrified. What did you expect that I thought would happen? And they're like, we need food and we're desperate for it. And she does this really cool thing where, and she says it a couple of times, she turns them into their true selves. She sees these men as pigs, and then undergoes these awful transitions to look at, where she then molds everybody into a pig. And you have these horrid... I would love to know how much of that is practical and how much of that is visual effects. She's literally like shoving her fist down some of their throats. She's like crunching their bones, molding their face, elongating their noses into snouts. I loved that scene.
Yeah, this is where it became horror for me. Like, while it was tense and it was scary with the moment with Cyclops, this was horror. This is full-blown body horror. It's insane. Everything that's happening is just like really disturbing. Even before the transformation begins, where they can't stop themselves from eating. And while she sees them as these pigs, like, she has obviously got some sort of spell or enchantment on them and the food that they're eating, and they're just like unable to stop themselves from gorging, and they're there like being unwell and not being able to stop. All of that was horrific.
Yeah.
Interesting that you should say how much of it was practical. I watched an interview with Himesh Patel, and he said that was all practical. Everything that you see in that scene is entirely practical. They watched it there in real time as that happened. So they had these practical makeup and masks and whatever they were doing to be able to morph and change and mold people's faces. And Samantha Morton, obviously, really fantastic with working whatever makeup and designs and all these things to do that. But it was insane. There's obviously some clever kind of camera tricks as well that they do, where they're like playing in between, like they move the camera in between like someone's back or someone's arm, and then you see kind of like a bigger transformation take place. So obviously they do kind of like swap out models and do things like that. But the whole thing is practical. Everything that happened throughout that scene is real, and they did it in real life, and that's even scarier. That Nolan could come up with that. That's crazy. If he can do that, he needs horror.
Exactly. And the food eating scene, I really struggle with, like, the sounds of people eating anyway.
Yeah.
And one of the most discomforting moments in The Substance is one of the scenes where the guy is eating like prawns and stuff with his fingers and he's like slobbering it down. That's like the most horrifying moment of The Substance. And this eating scene felt like that in the Odyssey. And I think I imagine with the food, it kind of, they can't stop eating it. It's like, I think they probably reversed that. That's probably reverse imaging, because it's like coming out of their mouth, but also just constantly going in, and they feel like they're choking. So my guess on how they filmed the food scenes is that they stuff their mouths with a load of these like noodles and meats and stuff, and then sort of drooled them out, and then maybe Nolan like reversed that section of the visuals. That's how I imagine it's done, because it feels like they're slurping consistently. And some of the performances from, you know, these extras, as it were, you know, unnamed crew, incredible, like facial performance expressions, really, really good, quite horrifying and unsettling. So really enjoyed that scene with Cersei. And then you get Odysseus kind of coming to save the day, and she has this really cool line where she says, "Back into your disguise," as she's morphing them back into humans, and you sort of see the pig hoof kind of morphing back into a human hand, and she's going, "Back into your disguise, back into your disguise," as she's putting them back into human form. I think that's a really neat sort of way to enforce one more time how she sees these people, and I thought that was a really nice addition to the dialogue that can easily be missed, I think.
One thing that I don't know, maybe it's explained more in the book, but I would love to have more of an understanding of. And again, I get it, because you can only do so much in a 3-hour movie even. Yeah. But there were a whole bunch of different animals on the island, right? Like Odysseus kills a deer or a doe and then ends up seeing it be a person. And so that's when he becomes informed of it. But the men, as they're passing by and going to the house, they see lions, tigers, lots of different creatures. Why are all of those humans turning into all those things? Like, if they're being turned into pigs because that's their true nature, what's going on with the other ones? That was just a question I had. I'd love to know more about it. Maybe it's in the book. I don't know. Tell me in the comments.
Because she turns her sister into a crow. And it's like, that feels like a weird bird to and a very funny line where she's like, "We get on better like this." I think it's hilarious. And you know, I've got a brother, and I'm like, there's moments where I wish he was just a crow. It'd be so much easier. So really cool scene. But again, I didn't quite understand there's like, you get like a panther, and then you get a lion, and I don't know either. So if you guys know, listening or watching, please do comment. A reminder, Spotify has comments. I do read them. We get a couple, but join in if you have stuff to say. Comment them, and we can always revisit them at the start of the next episode, or I'll reply to them, or I'll ask Ben's opinion, and we'll make sure we comment back to you guys. So whether you're listening or watching on Spotify or YouTube, please do comment, get involved. We always want to hear what you guys have to say. Following Cersei's interaction is a sequence that they kind of called Under Zeus's Sky. So you get the whirlpool, and then the like rock creature thing.
And just immediately prior to that, you've got the sirens. So you're sailing...
yes, of course. Sorry, you have they cross past the sirens first. So this is when, they're going through the water. They're traveling across, and they're warned of the sirens. I mean, Odysseus knows that it's coming, right? So he's like, "Oh, I'll plug the men's ears with wax." And I think that's really.
Before this, it must have had Hades, because that's where he's informed of those things.
Does it after
in Hades
after
they tell
Cersei,
him?
Is she the one that tells him to go to Hades?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So switch all of that.
Okay.
So Cersei then says, "Go to Hades and visit your men," right, and sort of speak to them. So that's where you get that interaction with Sinon coming out of the ground. I think that's really cool. I think that looks amazing. That sort of black beach mud design really felt like a different tone again to everything else. And we've spoken about Elliot Page's performance, but I think in that one really shines. And it's just a crowd of thousands of men that Odysseus has left, because he's not followed Zeus's law. And consistently, we get reminded by Odysseus's crew that he's like, we have to bury these men, we have to honor them. And he's like, "No, we'll honor them by escaping." And Odysseus is kind of always making up his own rules of what's right and what's wrong. And we sort of really see those effects where they start moving forward through the crowd, and they kind of want their revenge almost on Odysseus.
I think this is one of the most incredible scenes in the movie, to be honest. Obviously, it's a very pivotal scene in terms of like directing them on in their journey and helping them to figure out what it is they have to do next. But as well, visually, it is stunning. It is insane what kind of goes on. And again, from watching those interviews and seeing what's going on behind the scenes and talking about that, this is another thing that was done practical. these people were buried in the
Yeah.
sand with snorkels. So they were a bunch of stunt performers and things, literally buried in sand, covered in
Mhm.
dirt, covered in muck, while wearing all this armor and all the rest of it. And then they were given timers, so they had timers to make sure that they could make sure no one was going to run out of air and die
Yeah.
while they were filming the scene. So literally all the setup, all the stuff, and then one of the craziest details, right? Like Christopher Nolan decided to make this entire movie in IMAX. One of the most insane and frankly stupid things about IMAX and making a movie in IMAX is that every roll of film only captures 2.5 minutes worth of content.
Yeah.
So anytime they're recording anything, they have 2.5 minutes, then they have to cut, then it takes 5 minutes to replace the roll of film in the cinema camera and do it all again. So this had to be really precise. This had to be really intense to be able to get all these people buried, pull them out of the sand, get them to walk up and do this crazy intense ominous scene, capture all of that, and then walk away and be calling it a day. It
Yeah.
really is insane how much work went into this movie, and this scene
think
I think is one of the most impressive.
I think the full mag is like 3 minutes of film. But by the time action is called, everybody's like ready to go. It's ridiculous, and you can't sort of have somebody mid word and call cuts. But they did a lot of this where they would reach the end of that mag, that 2.5 minute, 3 minute mark. They would pause, they would reload the film mag, they would cycle back a line, and then get the characters to continue so that it felt like more of a flow. And I just think the effort that goes in from not only Nolan and their cinematographer, whose name I can't remember, but we'll speak about him in a bit, and all of the crew to just be. I think everyone's putting in 110% physical effort into this movie. I mean, it's a real impressive feat to be done. And that scene in particular, as you say, them being buried under sand with snorkels is crazy. I don't think any other director is brave enough to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But everyone on this set is like, this is Nolan. We are going to do this because it's Christopher Nolan. He's one of a kind.
Yeah, 100%. Cinematographer definitely deserves a shout out. It's Hoyt van Hoytema or Hoytema.
I think it's Hoyte. Yeah, Hoyte van Hoytema. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah,
who
incredible
did
stuff.
Interstellar, Oppenheimer, and Dunkirk and stuff with him, and Tenet as well.
Yeah.
He's absolutely. I mean, I want to speak about how this film looks, and I'm sure we'll get into it. But like his ability to pull focus on those ships, like they're actually out at sea. Those ships are moving in real time, and remaining like keeping focus on someone like, and a lot of this time they have this like IMAX camera sort of mounted, or even if it's on a sort of a rig, being able to hold focus on a character as a boat is just like washing around in the waves. It's nuts. It's absolutely incredible.
They spent months on the boats, and they taught a bunch of extras. They have a bunch of extras who were both Telemachus's crew and Odysseus's crew, who were taught how to like row this like Viking boat, and then they went out for months on the open water. They had storms, they had sea, they had real dolphins jump up alongside. Like it's insane the work and the commitment that went into this movie. But yeah, holding IMAX cameras as well, because they're giant cameras, they're massive physical beasts, and they're holding them, or they have like a rig next to it, and man, absolutely wild.
I think what's so special about this film is the amount of effort that goes into it is not only rewarded through performances and how audiences are perceiving it, but real life rewards. I mean, those dolphins weren't cast; they weren't asked to be there. It's just something so natural that happened, and Hoyt was able to then quickly pan the camera and capture these dolphins, swimming alongside them, and it really adds to the grand adventure of this movie. And it's like,
it does.
Imagine that didn't happen, but sort of the world aligned, the stars aligned because it's Christopher Nolan. And he's able to capture these things in IMAX. It's ridiculous.
In one of the little documentaries about the making of it that's up on Sky, one of the crew then spoke about that scene specifically with the dolphins and them jumping by, and they're like, you don't get that when you're on the closed water like of a set, we just wouldn't have got that. This is just this beautiful moment that really organically happens, and there's Odysseus staring out over the side of the boat while it happens. It's crazy.
And I think that's the reward you get for pushing yourself and your crew to the limits. I think those things come about. Right. So now after Hades and that black beach, you then have them under Zeus's sky. Which is where we then first encounter the sirens.
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked to have seen more of the sirens. I do think it's a really powerful scene where you have Odysseus tied to the mast and he's like, I want to hear this song. And he puts in this really powerful performance of him screaming, and it's muted as well because we're listening through the wax, and that's a really cool sound design moment where Himesh Patel puts in the wax in one ear and it gets half muffled, and he puts the wax in the other ear and it gets fully muffled, and it's such a little addition that probably didn't need to be included, and lots of directors might miss that, or some viewers might not realize that that's happening. But I love little sound design moments like that.
100%.
It just goes one muffle and another muffle, and it's just silent. And I think it's so, and I nerd out over that stuff, and I love it.
No, it was great.
But the sirens, like you barely see them. But I feel it's more about the impact of the sirens rather than like encountering them one-on-one. Matt Damon, brilliant in that scene, I think.
Yeah, and we lose one crewmate over the edge who takes out the wax and decides to jump off and swim in.
I was hoping that one would succumb to the curiosity, and he just unpicks it, and he's kind of looking around, hoping no one would notice, takes it out, and then you hear this song, and he's like, oh my God, I got to get over there now. He's fighting everyone, and he jumps in, and I'm glad they did that, because it happens in Ice Age, where they do it as well, where they interact with these like mermaid sirens in these like open pearls, and it's a crazy comparison to make between Ice Age and the Odyssey, but it happens in that as well. So I'm glad we got that. And then it kind of goes into a scene where I didn't particularly get much from it. I thought the whirlpool and the rock monster, I don't know the name of him.
I can't remember.
I wasn't particularly captivated by them. Like, the whirlpool is such a huge moment, and they're like, we're fighting Poseidon. This is because we attacked his Cyclops son. You know, they're saying, some of the crew members are like, we heard that he was sort of speaking to Poseidon. I feel like it was kind of rushed. I would have liked to have had another, even 30 seconds, minutes. And we get that moment of them fighting with the oars in the water, trying to turn, and the oars are breaking. And they're really trying to get down this narrow path. And it's this moment of manipulation between Odysseus and his crew, because he knows they have to go through this channel. So he tells them we should go towards the whirlpool. And they distrust him so much. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
They distrust Odysseus. Oh my God. They distrust Odysseus so much that they ignore him, and they're like, oh, well, we'll go through this channel. Of course we'll make it. But he knows that they will all die if they go the whirlpool, and only 6 of them will die if they encounter this monster in the rocks. But I did feel it was a little bit rushed. I would have liked to have had them battling the whirlpool a little bit more. But I did like sort of the abrupt nature of that monster coming out the rocks, snatching. I mean, I jumped like crazy when I first saw that. But how did you find it? Did you maybe connect to it a bit more?
I thought it was interesting. It's interesting in my obviously day job. I do a lot of writing and freelance entertainment journalism and covering things, and so I write for Screen Rant, and I do some video stuff and interviews and all the like. I've done an interview in the last couple of days with a professor in Sydney who is like an expert on the Odyssey and all the adaptations of the Odyssey, and obviously now a big fan of Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. And so it was fascinating to speak to him about the approach and the way that the adaptations kind of approach the story. There's one that came out quite recently where Ralph Fiennes is playing Odysseus, and it's called The Return. So it's not called The Odyssey, but it focuses specifically on the moment when he washed up on the beach and then getting back to his home in Ithaca and doing all of that stuff where he kind of reunites with Penelope, and Telemachus does his thing and all that stuff. But this one, it's such an epic and grand scale story that Nolan is trying to approach, and even in approaching that, you're losing a lot of pieces, right? Like, I'm sure these pieces could have done with another hour to really explore and dive into and kind of play with all of the things that are going on in it. I think exactly as you say, where it was a thing of like Odysseus having that moment of telling them go into the whirlpool to make sure that they go through the gap. I think it's nice, it's subtle, it's quick ways to kind of like develop their character more and tell you that he's very intelligent, he knows how to kind of handle his men, and he wants to save his men, and he wants to make the right choice even when it's a difficult choice. So I think it does a lot to kind of like perpetuate the characters and to develop them. And especially like Himesh Patel's character and the way that he has his conflict with Odysseus in this moment as well. I think it does a lot to build all of those parts out of the story. But yeah, I do think it is rushed. It is small. It's interesting how much they committed and put in so much effort to these things that would ultimately be tiny. I was thinking about it recently because I think they filmed in either 6 or 7 countries. They went to really remote locations, really odd places all around the world to do all these things. And obviously not every character was needed to go everywhere, but Odysseus was going everywhere and he was in all of these different places, right? And some of those scenes are really for such brief moments, whether it be the Lystrigonians, where it's just on the beach and it's a very small amount of time, Circe and the house on the hill and all of these different things. The months spent on the open ocean to be able to record scenes like this. Like, so much time and effort went into that. But really, where a lot of the story, this story specifically, this adaptation specifically takes place, is in one of the only set designs that they actually had, which is that kind of throne room in the Ithaca Palace. So they did have a throne room set built in LA in one of the sound stages, and that is where we see so much of Antinius's character, so much of Penelope's character, so much of everything that happens with them is there. And so much of like the external of the castle or other rooms of the castle is the Ithaca kind of set and wherever it is around the world. But it's interesting because he realistically, if Christopher Nolan wanted to, he could have made this entire movie in LA and just focused on that throne room and had that soundstage, and we would have got mostly a similar product. But the epicness and the scale and the intensity of so many things that come out are from all these small moments that come together. So yes, this is a very small moment, but I think it adds to the scale and the grandeur of the whole thing. But it really was like, it's you'd love to see more of it. You'd love to almost have this as a trilogy. Make this the Lord of the Rings, you know, and really just go all in and give us 4-hour extended cuts of each film. But like, that's not what happened here.
Yeah, and I think if Nolan could, he would have this push that 3-hour mark. But a neat thing about neat or not neat about the IMAX projectors is they can only run 3 hours of film. So this film was always going to be in its sort of 2-hour 50 mark because the BFI it doesn't have the capacity to run 3.5 hours of IMAX film.
Yeah.
So it was always going to be limited. We'll talk about sort of two big moments. The Battle of Troy, the Siege of Troy. I absolutely adore when they drop out of that of the Trojan horse, and I said this to one of my friends. It felt very Assassin's Creed-esque. You know, they sort of lightly drop down. They're tackling the guards. They're sneaking around at night. I really enjoyed sort of the intensity of that. It felt more like a thriller, like a spy thriller at that point. And you have them shooting the arrows at the guards, and they're trying to open the gates, and you have this incredible score. This is probably where I think the score stands out the most to me. This beat going along underneath as they're trying to open the gates, and then the guards of Troy realize what's happening. The sirens are going. They're banging on these metal plates, and everyone's running, and Odysseus is just firing arrows left, right, and center, and it feels so hype. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think as well, to kind of go back to John Bernthal, I think this is where his performance shines the most, both being in the horse along with Odysseus, and then having this moment where he breaks out and he goes with Odysseus and kills people, does his Assassin's Creed thing, and then goes around and frees everyone. It does what they need to do and then opens the gates. I think this was a scene that captured some of the most emotion in the entire film, right? And it really just kind of like hits you hard. You have your Agamemnon reveal where he walks into the city once the gates are open, and you're like, holy crap, this guy is here. Things are about to go down. Everything's insane. But even in this moment, we don't get the full reveal of that. Like, we get the big rush on the city. We get the big, like, gates are open and they take over and they win the Siege of Troy. But this like whole scene becomes reframed later on in the movie when we get that kind of flashback to it. But I think, the way that this is framed in this first instance is really fascinating because the whole scene becomes this victory march, this parade through the city, this wonderful thing where it's like, damn, these guys are clever, smart, super strong, doing their thing. And like, you're rooting for that team. And then later, there's a little bit of a reframing to the whole thing. But this scene, this moment, and where it comes in the movie, incredible.
I just think what I also found out is that when they were filming, both John and Matt Damon didn't know that there were like 750 extras behind those gates. So
Yeah.
they open these gates in this incredible moment. You get that Agamemnon reveal, and they see like 20 extras there, right?
Oh,
And then sort of
yeah.
700 men run through screaming. And those reactions of Matt and John apparently are real. Like that wasn't like
Wow.
written out by that wasn't written out by Chris Nolan. And it's
Wow.
just incredible seeing these hundreds of men like powering through these gates, and it just feels like the most incredible immersive moment. And I was sat there beaming,
Yeah.
absolutely loving it. And as you said, it's then heartbreaking that you get this alternate view of the scenario later on when we revisit Troy, and you're reminded how horrible these men are. And they're just
Yeah.
pillaging their way through, they're burning everything, they're killing innocents. And it just reminds you that these guys are so two-faced. You know, when you're following it from their perspective, it feels like the right thing. And then actually you take a step back and you
Yeah.
witness it from sort of Zendaya's Athena's point of view when she's beheaded, and it's like, oh wow, these guys are just, they don't care.
It's,
They are the men from the sea, which I didn't pick up on
yes.
first time round, and I was kicking myself, I didn't notice it. It
Yeah.
gets mentioned when they visit a few of the sort of different populations across the globe, as it were.
Yeah.
They're saying, "Look, we're from we're from Ithaca," and someone, I can't remember, like it's just a random village, and he's like, "Are you the men from the sea?" He's like, "No, no, no, no. We're from we're from Greece. We're here. We just need food and water." And
Yeah.
then it's later sort of you pick up on it, it's like, oh no, these people are the men from the sea. These stories have been traveling around the globe about these horrible pillagers.
I, I believe in Odysseus's and Penelope's reunion in this film, he does admit to being the men from the sea, because it is
Yeah,
the men from the sea. The terrifying thing about them is not just that they come from the sea and that they're willing to attack, but that they don't obey Zeus's law. That these are people who exist in a totally different system to everyone else. While everyone has this shared moral belief and believes that they will kind of respect these rules and uphold them, the men from the sea are the ones who just completely trash that. And yes, of course they're that, because
yeah,
they gave a gift and used that to their advantage to win and to destroy and to pillage and to do horrific things.
yeah. And I think what's so intriguing is a lot of the time Odysseus and his crew are encountering all these myths and these gods in different forms,
Yeah.
and they always see themselves as like, oh, we have such hardship. But these other communities, the men from the sea, they're a myth. They're like, we've heard these stories about these horrible people. We're begging we don't have to ever encounter them. And then suddenly they appear in their hundreds on these ships, and they destroy and take everything in their path.
Yeah.
And they do it multiple times over. Um, and when it was first mentioned at that village, "Are you the men from the sea?" I didn't quite pick up first time round that yes, they clearly are the men from the sea.
Yeah.
And I think that's there's individual lines of dialogue dotted throughout this film that I think are super important.
Yes.
And I think if you enjoyed this, if this movie is one of your highest of the year, a rewatch will boost it, because you pick up on so many little extra segments. And I think that's what's so brilliant about Nolan, is his rewatchability of his movies. I don't think there's many other directors out there where I'm like, I'm gaining something, and like I'm having a new experience every time I watch one of his films.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree.
Let's talk about the final moment, the biggest moment in Ithaca, where we have the return of Odysseus. He's hiding as a beggar. He's like, has this whole moment with Telemachus outside of the throne room, where he realizes that it's his father because the dog passes away on his return. He's been waiting 20 years for his owner to return. He passes away, and Tom Holland's like, "Oh, like, you're my father." And he's like, oh, and then he kind of plays off. He's like, "Oh, I'm not, but if I was, like, I'd be really proud of you." And that's quite a sweet moment. And he's hooded, and he goes into the throne room, and he just wants to see everything unfold, because he knows Penelope is doing the right thing. She is incredibly smart, and he doesn't sort of step in too early. He shows the truth behind Robert Pattinson's character Antinius, where he interacts with him and he throws the chair at his back, and everyone is very much on Antinius' side, where he's like, yes, we want to take over. Odysseus is dead. We're going to take Penelope as our wife. But then he throws this chair at Odysseus in disguise, and suddenly everyone's like, whoa, 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 you can't do that. Like, remember Zeus's law. Like, yes, we want to take over, but remember our rules. And that's a really interesting moment that even though Antinous and his crew are all bad, Antinous is even worse than them. And he's very similar to Odysseus in the way that he will ignore the rules when it suits him.
Yeah. No, it's true. This is the most emotionally charged scene in the entire movie, and this is where like the crux of everything comes together, where every piece of that setup kind of like really starts to fold in on itself. You start to realize the thing about the men from the sea. You realize things about Zeus's law. You realize everything just becomes crystal clear in these final moments, this final kind of act of the film. And I think it was just, it's really impressive because even coming into it, seeing Zeus go in and kind of be hooded, and you get him kind of getting that advice earlier on in the movie, like from Agamemnon, even Agamemnon, who was killed by his wife, tells him, go back as a beggar, don't go back as yourself. So that he's going to go back and go and have this plan. But there were parts of it that were kind of like a little bit confusing me, and I was like, why is he telling her to like go and marry someone? He's now back. Like, it's finally this time they can reunite. Why is he doing that? But even that, you then get the revelation of like, oh, she puts on a competition. He's there like telling Telemachus, and Telemachus is like, why are we doing all this? And he's like, oh, don't worry, your mother is taking care of me getting a weapon and things like that. And I'm like, slowly getting the pieces together, and then like the final thing happens and you're like, oh damn, okay. Stuff is going down. You see like the call back to his whole thing of stringing a bow and being able to do this thing that he shows off all the time, and suddenly this becomes more than showing off, but becomes proving who he is and who he still is, and to identify himself to everyone and have the doors locked behind them, and then just to kick ass. And it's like, oh man, like this is the heart of the movie, and it really just comes together so well.
I think one of my favorite moments, that we get sort of 3 moments of it throughout the movie, is when he strings that bow. First of all, Matt Damon's arms are jacked in this.
Yeah.
And you really see his like shoulder sort of like bulging out, and he does it, and Penelope's walking away, and he just does that dong with the bow, and it makes this awesome sound.
Yeah.
I think it's so captivating. And Penelope turns around, and she instantly knows that it's him because 100%. Of the way he did it. And then he fires the arrow all the way through the axes, hits the boards. Everyone clocks on, is like, oh shit, Odysseus is back. And it's arrow, poof, you're dead. Arrow, poof, you're dead. And it's just incredible. I mean, it's one of the best action sequences I feel I've been involved with for a very long time. And Nolan doesn't ever do, and it wouldn't have made sense for this story, like precise hand-to-hand combat. Like, it should feel very rugged. This is like 1200 BC. These men haven't been trained by Jackie Chan, all right? They are just like absolute units. And it feels very like thunky and heavy, and very similar to his Batman movies, where it's just using what you have around you to survive. And he's using this arrow, and then he runs out of the arrows, and he picks up the axe, and then he swings like the double axe around, and he's like knocking people, and then he has 1 arrow remaining. He's just like stabbing guys left, right, and center. It's so cool.
It's almost a Jason Bourne moment as well, isn't it? Where he's like picking up different tools and doing things, and the stabbing someone with an arrow, same as the stabbing someone with a pen, just kind of like being really versatile. It was really,
And I think what my other favorite moment about the scene is the sort of the cut between Odysseus fighting, and then you've got Telemachus trying to go upstairs to get more weaponry for his father, or to like, you have this moment where John Leguizamo's character interacts. I don't know the name of this other guard or someone that's part of Antinous' crew, but he has the spurs on, and we get a reference to it early on in the movie where he's like, take your spurs off, like you're in the throne room, I can hear you, you're so loud. And then you hear him running across the floorboards, and you hear his spurs going. And then you have Eumaeus shutting the door, because he's like, I heard you, I told you should have taken your spurs off. He gets closed in this weapon room, which I think is really cool. And then he's like he's breaking the floor with an axe, and he's throwing all this weaponry down. You then get and Tinius being like, get the swords, get the spears, get the shields, as he's hiding behind a barrier, being like super cowardice. And
Yeah.
then you also have Telemachus doing this incredible fight sequence where he's learned to sort of invite the attacks. You know, you cannot be perfect each time. And you
Yeah.
get this really powerful scene of them both being thrown over tables and him finally getting this kill that saves his father, dropping the sword down. He's like, he says like, Dad, or like something like that to catch
Yeah.
it. Drops down, you just know it's over for everybody. And I absolutely love that scene. Probably as much as I was really involved with the horror sequences, this just felt like we earned it as an audience.
Yes.
You know, we've
Yeah.
been through so much turmoil, watching all of these men die, seeing horrific things happen to Odysseus and what Odysseus' crew is doing to other communities, and yet it just feels like such weight off my shoulders to know that Odysseus has returned and everyone is screwed, and they know it as well.
100%. And this is what I've been saying. When I was talking to you about this after seeing the movie, when I was talking to some other friends about the movie, I was talking about it like being like this puzzle that, you know, Christopher Nolan is putting together. He's got all these pieces, all these things that he's developed over time, and he's putting it all together. And then at the end of it, he is putting the whole thing and you get the complete picture, and you do feel like you earned it. You do feel like it's your reward. You've accomplished the thing. You figured it out. I think that's incredible for Nolan to be able to make a movie where you don't just get to sit there and experience it, but you get to feel like you got to the end, the same as the characters in the story, is just a different kind of level of payoff and a different kind of satisfaction. I thought it was phenomenal. I do think it was a very funny contrast. The contrast between Odysseus fighting tens of men downstairs and Telemachus fighting one dude upstairs and getting thrown around. And like, also, he really sucked in that fight. Like, this guy throughout kept on pushing him down, kicking him over, doing whatever, and throwing down more and more weapons. So there were more spares, there were more swords, there were more shields, and Telemachus is just like really trying his best. And his dad could have died at any point in all of that. Like, there's a ton of weapons downstairs now. But finally he gets the upper hand and throws down one last sword, and then it's like, oh, cool, that's it, sorted. I thought it was a very funny kind of like contrast, but it was good.
I think Nolan's like, I don't think people quite appreciate how sort of whimsical Nolan can be and how quite funny he sort of makes scenarios, whether it's on purpose or not, because there's a moment just after that, after Odysseus wins, I mean, he's got like spears in him, arrows in him. He goes over to Penelope and he's like there, he's sort of revealing everything. She's like, you can't die on me, you can't die. And he's like, oh, I'm not dying. You know, he says it to her, he's like, oh, I'm not dying. You know, we're going to go into the setting sun.
Yeah. Which again is another thing that ties up the whole movie, because earlier on she was like, let's leave, let's go to the setting sun, let's sail away. I think it was so beautiful the way it was all put together at that end. And
I do think beautiful full circle moments. I mean, sometimes I feel with films, like when they introduce that like final scene, like they show you the final scene right at the beginning, and then it's like, oh, we're going to work our way around to that. But Nolan does this very neat job where he kind of shows you the final dialogue, but he doesn't show you that visual of what's actually going to happen. And it's like, you don't quite know that you're going to come full circle to that moment, and they're going to repeat basically those same lines, but in a so much more impactful manner. I think that whole final sequence for about 15 minutes, I'm just locked in. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Is there anything, before we sort of wrap up, speak about Nolan and a couple other things, is there any other moments throughout the film that stood out to you, or have we managed to cover it?
No, I think we've done a good job covering. We're almost at the duration of the entire film.
Yeah, we are. You guys can. This is your watch along podcast almost at this point. All right, let's talk about a few final things. How did you find the score of this movie? Because it's Ludwig Göransson, who obviously is worked on a multitude of films. He is probably going to be as big, if not already as big, if not bigger than the likes of Hans Zimmer. I really love him as a composer. I don't think this was his strongest. I don't find that the score was as strong as a character as it usually is. Like in Oppenheimer, it's a real accompaniment to that movie. Same in Sinners, obviously. I liked it, but I don't think it was brilliant.
So, on the score. Yeah, so with Ludwig Göransson's score for this film, I thought it was very interesting. It's very complex. Watching some of the documentaries and some of the interviews and things about it has kind of given me a little bit more respect and appreciation for it as well, because of what's been done to kind of build this out and to make it specifically what it is, right? So as far as I understand, Nolan really wanted this again to feel authentic. He didn't want it to be orchestral or to have this big swelling sound or have these big kind of like atmospheric tones to it, which is obviously what we expect out of an epic, right? Like that is kind of what you're looking at and expecting. But with this, Ludwig Göransson literally went back to a bunch of old texts, went back to a bunch of old materials, found different like instruments that they used 3,000 years ago, some that don't exist anymore, and then found ways to rebuild them and to make like new versions of them. So there's this like funny little whistle with two flutes. There's a lyre, which obviously we have lyres, but there's like it's a real old traditional lyre built in the same way, built with the same sort of things. And so the music feels very intimate. It feels very precise and very intentional in the way that it's kind of coming across. But yeah, I would agree. It's not big. It's not swelling. It's not trying to punch you with kind of sounds or a soundtrack or anything. That's kind of like this is not the same as the Dark Knight or Interstellar, where there's going to be music that you're going to go back to and be like, oh man, I love when that happened.
Yeah.
But I think it fits very much the story. I think it comes across in it. But yeah, I agree. It's not as big. It's not as epic as the film itself, but it is more almost the same as kind of like everything is focused on Odysseus. It's more small scale. It's just about one thing and kind of trying to capture one thing.
I mean, it definitely works, and it'll get nominations across the board, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Look, we are 2 hours into this discussion. I'm sure maybe once it's edited down, it might just be short. But I want to quickly do two things, which is we will very quickly both rank Nolan films, from worst to best, and we can have a quick conversation about that, and then we'll speak about the future of Nolan. Shall I go first on the? Yeah,
you go first.
Ranking.
Let's hear it.
I did a little bit of rewatching before the Odyssey.
Okay.
I revisited Insomnia. I watched Following for the first time.
Nice.
I rewatched Oppenheimer as well.
Cool.
Those were just sort of, I wanted to see like his early stuff. One of my favorites, and a recent. I would like to preface, all right, after 11th on this list out of 13, they are all 4 stars and above. All right, I adore Nolan. I'll say which ones are 5 stars, but just because something's in 11th place because I'm sure this will get clipped up the internet. Everything above 11th place is 4 stars. It's just some days, if you ask me tomorrow, one of my films might be in first place, and the day after it might get moved down to second or third.
I see.
13th place is his first feature, which was Following. 12th place is Insomnia. I think it's totally fine. I'm not gripped by it. Inception is in 11th place. I haven't seen this movie in about 4 years, so that is a disadvantage that I've not seen it for so long.
So this is where the 4 stars come in, right?
This is now everything from this point is at least 4 stars and above.
Okay.
We have The Dark Knight Rises in 10th place. 9th place, we have Tenet, which I adore, but I still do find it very confusing. 8th is Batman Begins, which I believe to be the greatest origin story of a superhero ever. 7th is Dunkirk, and is actually one of my favourite war movies of all time. I love the intensity and the sound design in that movie. 6th is The Prestige, which any other day of the week could be number 1. I absolutely love it, and it's criminally underrated, and people that have it in their top 5 I think are great human beings. 5th place is Oppenheimer. Again, there's no one like Nolan that can tell a historical like biopic really like that. I didn't think I would ever be so intrigued by something so what felt impactful for the human race, but small scale when I sort of found out he was doing it, and it's one of the biggest stories ever told and brilliant. 4th place is The Odyssey. So the Odyssey goes in 4th place, and I'll give you my score out of 5 in a second. 3rd place is Interstellar. It is one of the greatest movies to ever exist, categorically. I could revisit that film time and time again, and I have. 2nd is The Dark Knight. Again, ask me tomorrow, that could be number 1. It chops and changes, which means number 1, and a movie that I categorically think is perfect in every way. I cannot see a single fault in it, and that's Memento. And I have loved this movie ever since I saw it about 6 or 7 years ago. My God, that will never drop out of the top 2. It will chop and change with some others, but Memento for me is a perfect film. It's perfect Nolan. I love when he's a little bit smaller scale, but has this great use of time, and it's such a bizarre movie. It's so weird, and I like when Nolan gets a little bit weird. For me, Memento's number 1, and The Odyssey slots in at 4th place.
Lovely.
I'm intrigued to see how different ours are.
There's some similarities, but there's definitely plenty of differences here. Okay, so just to preface it, Following, I've not seen. Insomnia, I've seen many, many, many years ago, so I didn't feel comfortable rating that. I need to go back and rewatch it. I love Al Pacino. I love Robin Williams. I'm sure that I'd rank it somewhere. We'll see what.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen Dunkirk, which is just one that I really need to revisit.
Wow.
It just wasn't on my radar when it came out. I've watched everything else, but literally that just wasn't a thing. So I definitely need to go back and see that.
Oh, you've got to watch Dunkirk.
I will. It's definitely,
crazy.
it's been on my list. It came out near enough the same time as like 1917. And I don't think I saw that one either. And it was just like a couple of war movies that came out that were like really big and a lot of people were talking about. I didn't get into it at the time.
Yeah. 2017 was a big year of movies anyway.
Yeah.
So it could easily get lost in sort of.
Oh, I was fully on the Marvel MCU train 2017. I was too busy.
Thor Ragnarok. You had Homecoming. Crazy year.
So getting into it after that, I've actually done it on like just a tier list to kind of go through it. Because I wanted to kind of play it out and see what I was thinking. So the bottom of it for me is, I don't know, is it 10th place?
Yeah, if you've not seen 3 of them.
Yes.
Yeah,
10th place.
3 of them. 10.
The Dark Knight Rises. I've put it in good. I think it's a good movie. I don't think it comes anywhere close to the other 2. I think Batman Begins and The Dark Knight really, blow it out of the water. It's good, but again, it's not my favorite superhero movie. It's not up there for a lot of things, and it has to come as kind of a package deal with the rest, so it doesn't stand out in the same way a lot of other Nolan movies do. Then I've got Tenet. So Tenet I've got as my 9th place. Again, it is a very confusing, very odd, very wild one. I think there's a lot of good performances, but it just wasn't one that resonated or connected with me as much as everything else.
So we're 10th and 9th are the same so far.
Yes. So we're in great now. And so it is in the great tier, but I'm going to get a lot of flack for this. Interstellar was my number 8. I know a lot of people love Interstellar. A lot of people put that as number 1 when they talk about Nolan movies.
Yeah.
And that makes sense, but it just I don't know, man. It's a similar sort of thing in terms of like there's so much going on, there's so much confusion, there's so much wildness, and I don't think I'm that into space movies. Maybe that's just where it is, but it's just like I just wasn't as captivated and enthralled as a lot of people were, and it's like, oh, going through the black hole, doing this. I'm like, okay, but it just didn't tickle me.
I think that might be a limiting factor. If you're not into space movies, I'm not sure Interstellar's going to be your number 1.
Yeah. And then I've got Batman Begins. So I very much agree. I think it's a phenomenal hero origin story. Christian Bale is unbelievable. Great movie. Sits right there in the great tier. Then it's interesting. For my number 6, I've swapped with you. So my number 1 was The Prestige, and that was where your number 1 was Memento. And so we both talked about this previously. My number 6 is Memento. Again, I like it. I really like the non-linear storytelling in Memento. I think it is very clever. I think it's very interesting and intriguing the way that it's done. Again, some of the weird doesn't captivate me in the same way. I don't mind absurd or weird or wacky, but it is almost, like I said earlier, what plays into kind of sometimes I feel like there's weirdness for the sake of weirdness or experiment for the sake of experiment. I didn't again, it just didn't resonate with me in the same way. It didn't hit me in the same way. Then I've got Inception. So Inception for me came out at a really pivotal time. Seeing that in the cinema and doing that was just that was crazy for me, and it was just like a mind-bending movie in every sense of the word. It really blew me away. So I love that one. Then we get into the masterpiece.
I think
Sorry.
with Inception, like I was 8 when that movie came out,
Yeah.
and I didn't watch it until maybe 10 years post that. So
Yeah.
I probably missed that moment. And I think again, watching Nolan movies in the cinema is going to make a huge difference, just because
100%.
like naturally, obviously, you've got better design, better visuals. You're locked in. No one's on their phone. There's no distractions going around. Inception, like I've only ever seen it. I think I watched Inception like on my phone maybe once on like a plane.
Right. Okay.
And I think that was maybe the last time I've seen it. So definitely needs and deserves a revisit.
100%.
Yeah.
It's a good one. It's a good one. Now we're into masterpiece territory on the tier list. So at the very top of the list, we've got these next 4 films, which are my top of the line. This would be like 4.5 and above kind of thing. So 4th place here, Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer, I thought, was unbelievable. Performances, unbelievable. It made you care about a story that, like you say, is kind of like not one that everyone's kind of familiar with, but obviously has so much impact on so many people. Felt like a very grounded, incredible story. I just love everything with it. Next, 3rd place, The Dark Knight. I don't even know that it needs explanation at this point. It's been talked about to such an extent. People just know. This is like out there, and it is just such a good superhero movie. It really, really is.
With The Dark Knight, I always think when it's been like a year or so since I've watched it, I'm like, it can't be that good. I must be delusional. Then you revisit it and you go, holy shit, this movie's unbelievable.
Just from the very first moments of the bank robbery and the masks and then everything that gets revealed. And it's just like, this is Nolan meets superheroes in the best way. Everything is just like coming together. It's phenomenal. It really, really is. And then, so this is where things get, shaky, because obviously we've got the Odyssey left and we've got the Prestige left. The Prestige, for a long, long, long time, that movie came out 2005, 2006, has been my favorite movie, and it has been dethroned because the Prestige is in number 2.
Wow.
I love that movie. I love the performances. I can't say enough good stuff about it. It really was one of the movies that made me into a cinema lover and a cinephile in that way. It just is a stunning, stunning work of art. But the Odyssey really tickles everything that I love about movies. I'm a big fan of Greek mythology. I'm a big fan of fantasy. I'm a big fan of epics. I'm a big fan of adventure. I love the cast. I love the storytelling. I love the way that the non-linear storytelling approach fits into this. And I really, really do think that this is a culmination of everything that Nolan has done up to this point. I think that everything he's worked on has prepared him for this movie, and knowing that this is a movie and a story that he wanted to tell for so long, and then the lengths that he's gone to, just endless respect. This is out and out incredible. So yeah,
I'm gonna guess, is your Letterboxd rating a 5-star?
it is a 5-star. Yes,
It's a 5-star.
yes.
I have given it a 4.5 and a like. I think it's absolutely incredible. I mean, it sits number 4 on my Nolan list at the moment. Could easily, like when I rewatched this in August, I would be very comfortable putting this above Interstellar. I have no problem by saying that already. I'll have to see how it sort of reminisces with me over time. I again, in a couple of years, it could be number 1. That's what's so great about Nolan, is you gain something every time you rewatch these movies. I give it a 4.5 and a like. I think it's brilliant. I do think where it limits, I know some of this is going to be silly to people, but the size of the cast, the amount of A-listers does draw me out at certain moments. I think some of their dialogue is a little bit weak. I also think the first 20 minutes is a little bit clunky. I struggled to sort of lock in straight away. And all of those together, I mean, it only loses half a mark. And that's pretty good going. I mean,
and this is the thing as well, because it's Nolan, you're holding him to a higher standard, right? So 4.5 for anything is incredible, but this is Nolan. Like, you have to compare it to everything, and he is at the top of that game, and so it really, there is a harsher kind of criticism that ends up going into this sort of thing.
Like, if Sean Levy did this movie, I'd be giving it 6 stars. It'd be a very different conversation.
Yeah.
So we do hold Nolan to a much higher standard. But that's his own fault for being too damn good, to be honest.
Exactly. Yeah.
Final thoughts. Where would you like to see Nolan go next? I mean, I've heard 2029 is his next film, kind of loosely projected for then 3 years' time. So he'll probably have 6 months off and then start penning something if he doesn't have an idea already. Is
Yeah.
there anything particular you'd like to see him cover? Do you want to see a historical movie again? Do you want to see him enter back into that sort of sci-fi?
I don't know. I think one of the fun things about Nolan is the fact that he kind of approaches such an eclectic kind of variety of projects. And, you know, while not everything resonates with everyone, Interstellar for a lot of people hit the mark. It wasn't really my cup of tea. This is going to hit the mark for me, and it won't be the cup of tea for everyone else. And I think the fact that he approaches really veritable stories, approaches like a biodrama with like Oppenheimer, and then approaches superhero stories, I think he just does a lot of fantastic things and really draws a broad audience in to experience something that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise. So honestly, I'd be happy to watch anything that he makes. And that would have been the answer even going into this movie before I saw the movie. But it's even more so now. I think I'm excited to see what he goes towards next. Knowing that this is like the epic of his life and the one that he's been dreaming of for 20 years kind of puts a little bit of pressure on the next one, because it's like, does he care about this nearly as much? Is this something that's been in the back of his mind for a long time? What is going to go on? So I don't know. It could go either way, that we'll just see him kind of have a lot more fun with other projects and go a little bit wacky and just play around.
Yeah.
Or it could just be really building on that success. I don't know.
I would definitely like to see him. I think the horror elements in this movie really stood out to me, and I'd like to see him tackle that more.
Yeah.
My idea of where I'd like to see him go next is sort of do a Fincher kind of route and do something like Seven, like a crime thriller that has sort of horror intertwined throughout it. Knowing Nolan, he'll probably add in some sort of time, like storyline, like a time traveling killer or like, you know, something like that. I would be down for another time based movie. I think he does them perfectly. But I would like to see him be a lot more darker with whatever he does next. That'd be fun.
Is Insomnia not like a crime thriller with like a very dark, twisty kind of narrative?
I wouldn't say it's, because you're kind of given the twists very early on. You're offered up this, you know that Al Pacino's character is faulted from the start.
Right, okay.
And Robin Williams kind of plays, you kind of get introduced to him halfway through. I just don't find it the most captivating crime thriller. Like, I don't think the story is particularly interesting. I like the setting. You know, it's set in a town where the sun never sets, and this guy is dealing with insomnia, and whilst also trying to hunt down this serial killer.
Yeah.
I just don't know. I didn't find that the way that was written to be particularly like edge of my seat stuff. And I think he can go a little bit grander than that. So maybe he can find the middle ground between Insomnia and Tenet. I think that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
I'd like to see him go. I think smaller scale next time around. Like, we've had a few movies in a row where the budget's like hundreds of millions.
Yeah.
And Memento is done with like, say like 10 million. It's like really low. So I would like to see, not that Nolan, you know, is affected by budget in any way at all. But I would like to see maybe something a little bit more reserved.
Yeah.
I think that would be neat. $9 million Memento was done.
Wow.
But yeah, I'm excited for the future of Nolan. We will, of course, both be there. It's some very exciting stuff. Do you have anything you want to add? We are pushing the 2.5-hour mark.
Sure. The only thing that I'll leave on is so obviously before going into this, I was just kind of thinking about what is the other movie. Obviously, Nolan is like a Oscar magnet, right? Like, he has just gotten so many of his films have earned multiple Oscars. But I was surprised to see that the most Oscars he's won for a single film has been 7 with Oppenheimer. So 7 total wins. Obviously, he's had more nominations and different things like that. I do think it's probably going to crack that with this movie. I'm just looking down the list of different Oscar categories and things. And obviously, we've got things like Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor in a Leading Role, Best Actor in a Supporting Role, Actress in a Supporting Role, Best Adapted Screenplay. All of those, I think, are pretty much shoe-ins for getting like a nomination at the very least. Then we've got things.
Yeah, so let's figure this out. How many Oscar nominations do we think The Odyssey will get? Let's go through them. Actor in a leading role, yes.
Yes, 100%.
Actor in a supporting role, I think John Leguizamo will get that. So definitely, if not a couple of them.
Yeah. I don't think Holland. I think Robert Pattinson could end
Yes, I
up with
think
that.
Patterson will get that. I don't
I
think
think
Holland
he'd
will
win
quite
that.
make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't
So
think Holland would make it.
that's two. Actress in a leading role. Anne Hathaway gets in. Yes. So
Yeah.
will she be leading or will she be supporting?
I think for the sake of the category, they'll probably put her down as leading, but she is more of a supporting role. So I'd almost put it as one of those two because there's not a whole lot of female actors. So I'd say out of best actress in a leading or best actress in a supporting, I think it's gonna like be nominated for one of those two, maybe not both.
I don't think any of the other female actors are in it enough to be nominated for supporting as well either.
Yeah,
They have
yeah,
such limited screen time. So we'll
yes,
combine leading and
and
supporting
just yeah,
actors and say
exactly.
third. That's third nomination.
Yeah,
Obviously this isn't animated, so that's not related.
sure.
Casting, yes, that gets in. I think
Yes,
just off pure size of who's in this, they get in. I still don't quite understand how casting works, to be honest, whether it's like, oh, here's an ensemble cast or individual castings are brilliant.
I
And I
think
think
it's
that,
probably casting like people that fit the role, right? Like
yeah.
you really fit the character that you were playing. But yeah,
So that's
I would say
four.
so. Yeah.
Cinematography, lock. I mean,
Yes.
Hoyter is a master at his
A
game.
million percent yes on that one.
Okay. Costume design, yes.
Yes. Fully.
I,
Like unbelievable because costume not only like encapsulate like obviously also there's a little bit of overlap in makeup and hairstyling, but like costume is going to play in a little bit with like different characters and things like that as well. I think unbelievable.
I think people were concerned going in. I've never thought characters looked cooler. Okay,
Yeah,
sorry, Agamemnon looked incredible in this.
a
I don't
hundred
care what
percent.
people said. Oh, it's not historically accurate. I don't care. It's Nolan. All right, let him do his own thing.
Yeah,
So
who
that's
cares?
six.
Yeah,
Directing, yeah.
yeah.
That couldn't be more of a lock than anything else.
100%.
Film editing. Now, I don't think the editing on this is particularly fantastic, and I do think it's clunky at certain points. But do we think it will get the nomination anyway?
I
think
think
it will.
so. And I think it will be a little bit because of the IMAX nature of it, right? So
Mm,
the editing process for this is also more of a challenging kind of approach because they have one roll of a master copy of a film that they have to put through a computer. They have to get like specific numbers for the different things, cut it, and then physically join those things together. So in terms of just sheer real-time editing, this is more of a challenge than a lot of other things. So I think it
yeah.
is definitely going to get the nomination, at least for that.
So that's 8 nominations.
Yeah.
Makeup and hairstyling, I think that's pretty much a lock as well. I think
100%.
that's it.
Again, because of practical effects, that can
Mhm.
also play into this. And just the Cersei scene alone, practical effects, makeup and hairstyle, like that's stupid.
Yeah.
Stupid good.
So that's 9. We then
Yeah.
have music original score. Yeah, it's Ludwig. He'll get in. Like
Yeah.
that man could be part of any movie. He's also now at a point like Hans Zimmer. You just nominate them, but it is still good. As much as it wasn't my
Yeah.
favorite of his, it's still very good. So that's 10
Yeah.
nominations. Music original song. Now the original song for this is Travis Scott's end credits. I can't say I particularly cared for it at all. I've not
I
revisited listening to it.
Yeah, neither have I. Christopher Nolan, apparently for the first time, he is credited as like a lyricist on that as well, so he came up with
Okay.
some of the lyrics for it. But I don't know. I don't think so. It's not that crazy.
I can't say I know many other original songs this year that are top of mind, but
Yeah.
because we've said yes to so many others, we'll say no on this occasion.
Yes.
So we're
Yeah,
sat
that
at
makes
10.
sense.
Best Picture. I wonder whether this might get nominated for Best Picture.
Uh-huh.
11.
Yeah.
Production design. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's 12.
Set building, overall visual environment, just the fact that they went to all these locations and built a set in a cave, right?
Uh-huh.
Like that alone, yes.
Sound. It's in. I love
Yeah.
the sound design of this movie.
100%.
It's
You
in.
were mentioning about the earwax scenes and things like that. There's
Yeah.
a lot of different things. Yeah.
So that puts us at 13. Is that right? 13.
I think so. Yeah, we're at 13. And then
Visual effects. Yes.
Yes.
14.
Yeah.
I mean, Cersei's scene alone, that would win it. And for
Yeah.
the Cyclops. So
Yeah.
that's 15. No, 14. 14.
yes.
Adapted screenplay, 15.
Yes.
Because this is a brilliantly adapted thing. So that's 15 nominations. And I'm going to guess that the Odyssey wins 9 categories.
And just as another piece of information, so apparently the movie with the most Oscar nominations in history is a 2025 movie, horror film, Sinners. Had 16 nominations. So they're one ahead of what our prediction is. I really do think 15 nominations is probably right around where it's going to be. I think that's probably going to be it.
I think beating Sinners will take a long time to be done. I don't think there's going to be a movie for years that does that again, in truth. But we're saying 15 nominations for the Odyssey at the Oscars, and I'm going to predict it wins 9 of those.
Yeah. And if that's the case, if it gets 15 nominations, it is still breaking the previous record of 14 nominations, which was held in a 3-way tie by All About Eve, Titanic, and La La Land.
Wow.
So those are the previous ones. The record was 14. If it gets 15, it is still like up there. This is the second most nominated movie of all time. I think you're probably right. Sitting around there at 9, kind of conservatively. I think it's probably going to be 9 or 10, if I'm honest. I think it tips the scales in a lot of these, so potentially it could win a few more of the categories. But it was insane.
Pick one of those numbers. And
then 10. We'll be different. I'll come away when it's 10, and we come away. We'll talk about it again.
Okay, all right. Listen, we are at the 2.5-hour mark. I don't know how long this will be for you listeners. A couple of things will be sorted around. But Ben, wow, what an episode, man. What a movie. We had a lot to say. Thank you so much, as always, for being here. Thoroughly enjoyed it. All of Ben's links will be in the description down below. Of course, make sure you go check him out. Give him a follow on all of his socials. Ben will be back in the near future, potentially for Spider-Man. But we have a very busy summer. And there's a lot of great horror movies, a lot of directors returning after a few years. We have Dune, of course, right at the end of the year. We've got Doomsday. We will do a preview of all of those movies as well as covering them. I'm excited for Resident Evil. Robert Eggers is coming back. There's so much to discuss. If you guys have a film in particular that you want to make sure Ben is here to discuss with me, make sure you comment. Follow the Spotify podcast, rate the show 5 stars. Subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you give it a like. Check out my links below. Ben, thank you very much. Any final words of wisdom for the listeners?
Always a pleasure. Thank you very much. We'll see you again soon.
Cool. See you later, guys.
Cheers.